find himself getting passed by multiple cars, as I mentioned earlier on. So New York in a very precarious situation, but he often finds himself in these places. He doesn't qualify as well as he races.
Up front, they are getting with Lee Aberdeen and Luca Varani, not very far apart at all here. But I just want to see how Alistair Hay deals with Marcello Kessler coming around the old hairpin.
I would say it's not the best decision they've ever made, just not having done that under the safety car, really.
Yeah, they're taking their pit stop strategies from Ferrari lately or something. What's going on?
In turn one, just too much gas on them, too much feet on the loud pedal, and unfortunately he's dropped him all the way down the order. But Philip Hammer is out in front by an 8.91 seconds. Dan Michael is a wall there, sir. And definitely doesn't want to be hitting that earlier on as well.
Difficult, the understeer is in the dirty air through that final corner because it's such a long corner and you get dragged off into the grass very easily. He'll have the slipstream down in towards the chicane. Peterson was briefly alongside, but that slipstream has saved him and kept him in third.
Yeah, Varani now lost a little bit of time to Aberdeen, about half a second. Peterson is Pike's pushed Morton forward up ahead. He's got out of line. Is now Pike going to have a go at Werrell? Don't push him off. He's in the championship fight. Jack Werrell chasing down Carl Jacklin. Further down, Rob Williams and Chris Barnes.
Sensational run outside line now though for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's come back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such up. He's left on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
On to the back end of Phil Jocelyn. So there's been a lot of movers and shakers in this first 2 laps here for race.
Absolutely serious racing league. Everybody's a lot have fun. Yeah, it's all about the entertainment. So I hope everybody is enjoying themselves out there in the chat. We know that Ron is enjoying himself watching. And Burger King machine's off into the grass a little bit there. Is that really bunching up now?
2024 Virtual World Sports Car Championship here live from Daytona. We're going racing here tonight for 2.4 hours. And it's great to kick off another season of this great championship. My name is Ewan Leary alongside Bradley Dalton for this first round of the season. And we'll be here over the course of the next few hours or so, bringing you the opening round of this new season. A big welcome to everyone who's tuned in this evening. Good to have you along for the ride in what is going to be a great season. Starting off here at Daytona, of course, let's take a look at the other sort of rounds that we're going to have over the course of the season. Qatar 100 minutes will be next, although that's coming up in around 5 weeks' time. Then we'll be into the swing of things. From Sebring onwards, the rounds will come a little bit thicker and faster from there. Imola and Spa, the standard 90-minute distances, round 4 and 5. And then the big one, the 4.8 hours of Le Mans, which gives the most points of any round this season. Hit 60 laps of the Glen will come a couple of weeks after that, a few weeks after that even. Then there's a few 90-minute races in that sort of leg of the season, much like what we got last season actually throughout the middle, where we saw a lot of 60-minute races as it was in 2023. We've gone up to 90 minutes in 2024 at Sao Paulo, Kota and Fuji. Then the Indy 100, which is, despite the name, not a oval race. Then the 100 laps of Road Atlanta and the 2 hours of Bahrain to round off 13 races here this season. And, of course, the 14th being the exhibition race at Round Zero, which took place 1 week ago. Let's bring you up to speed with this circuit then as well. It's the Daytona International Speedway, the world centre of racing as it's self-proclaimed. And here is the challenge of it. In towards turn 1, of course, that big braking zone off the banking. Very difficult to get right. And then there's some slow speed sections throughout the infield. And, of course, the low downforce requiring banking sections. You'll go through NASCAR's turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 as well at very high speed. So straight line speed clearly going to be very, very important today. The tyres are a bit of a talking point because we obviously have got on to a new season. Hypercars have the options of mediums or hards. The GTs only have the mediums. Everyone has just wet weather tyres as well. It's been simplified a little bit for 2024 in terms of tyre compounds. And then we've got the challenges, the keys to the race here for the Daytona 2.4 hours here this evening. Tight track limits. Watch out for that because it's a very flat racetrack as you would expect from a roval, and you can very easily transgress the limits. So make sure you're in in a line with that. Avoid multi-class chaos. That is going to be a problem, even though there are only 2 classes, of course. There are on 4 subcategories, if you like. It will be a challenge, especially for the hypercars, to make their way through on the slower GTs and nail the bus stop. Really important to get round there well because that sets your run up all the way through NASCAR 3 and 4, along with the run down the tribal and into the braking zone for turn number 1. So you've got to make sure that you get the bus stop right. And, of course, that ties into the difficult track limits we've got for this race. Welcome on, as I mentioned, to everyone who's tuned in this evening. Welcome along to the JPB YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe for all the other racing that's going on throughout the weeks and, of course, for all 13 rounds of this championship, which we're bringing to you live this season. Starting off here at Daytona, my name is Ewan Leary alongside Bradley Dalton for this one. Bradley, welcome to the booth. Good to have you alongside me for the opening round. I mean, what a great place to open the season. Where better to do it than at Daytona?
Yeah, Ewan, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're at in the world. And this racing is back. I've always said every year that the Rolex 24 and the roar to the 24 and the run up for everything is where we say that racing is around for the calendar year. And sim racing has brought us that unique world where we get to kick everything off virtually. I'm, of course, sitting, in the comfort of my home, and we're going to watch these virtual cars go around. In 5 days' time, I'm jumping on an airplane and I'm flying to Daytona, and I'll get to watch the real world 24 hours. But 2.4 hours here in the virtual world sports car, and it is going to be a amazing way to kick off this 13-round championship. I'm real excited to see this start from here, go all the way through. You hit on all the high points of things, and as we see the cars going out and going around, Ewan, I'm very, very excited to see at the end of 2.4 hours who finishes where and who is going to set the tone for this 2024 championship.
Yeah, this round is worth second most in terms of points of any round of the championship this season. Only Le Mans scores more points than this one, and so it is important to set the tone very well. An evening to everyone. As I mentioned, Alex Goldschmidt is here and says good evening, and I thought it was on another broadcast actually, maybe he's just finished, but anyway, he's saying good evening, and good evening to everyone else who's been chatting with us as well before we went live. Not broadcasting qualifying this season as we've already seen, so qualifying has already happened. Daniel Kirby has taken the pole position, I can tell you, in the hypercar class. In hypercar AM, we have seen a pretty close battle actually, but it's Philippe Diacati who's taken the pole there ahead of Jerry Chen and Guillaume Benck. That was a very close qualifying between those three. And then in GT3 we've got Alessio Neto on pole in the Mercedes. It's actually a Mercedes front row because Sachin Sobers is alongside Neto. And then in the GT3 AMS it's Ferrari on pole with Josh Lipetri in that one. Matt Buis is a few positions further back, but he's second in GT3 AM. We've only got 6 of those on the grid, and 2 of them didn't qualify, so hopefully we do get everybody out there onto the circuit at least for the race, because we've got 41 entries. I hope that we see everybody out there on the circuit on this occasion for this opening round of the season. We're in warm-up right now, and as you can see, everybody's figuring out where their pit box is. And this is always a problem in R-Factor 2, Bradley. Well, I say problem. It's just something you have to deal with, really. The fact that you can't drive through people, like on certain other simulators, you have to drive around them. And if you're sharing a pit box, then that takes some working out. And that's exactly what these 10 minutes are for here in warm-up.
Yeah, and it's a unique thing to R-Factor 2, and, you know, it's something that distinguishes this sim for me and distinguishes kind of a challenge. In other sims, you know, you can just kind of pull through, drive, your spotter's going to tell you 3, 2, 1, and then you just hit the brakes and go. But here in this sim, you have to truly make that real-life pit stop, and it is unique. And it's something that, personally, I enjoy. I enjoy the, you know, realism to it, and I enjoy seeing that dip in and that stop, and you have to contend with the traffic around. So it's something to keep your eye on throughout these 2.4 hours, because these cars are going to have to pit fairly often for tires and fuel and driver changes. So keep your eye on that pit lane, and we might see a little bit of action in the pit lane as things go. But, you know, I'm hoping that it stays clean, but something tells me there's going to be at least 1 or 2 little moments of whoopsie daisies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We do have Ross Smith, by the way, in the booth with us as well. So I'm hoping that we're not coming to him too late in the day to chat to him about. We've got a bit of time, I hope. So we can chat to Ross a little bit about the season before it actually gets underway. Just on that point, Ross, how many pit stops are we expecting here today over 2.4 hours? It's used to be always a talking point, of course, even in the 60-minute races. We used to see quite a lot of pit stops. What are we hoping to see for 2.4 hours here today in terms of the hypercars and the GT3s?
Good evening, and thanks for having me. And yeah, you're right. It is a point of concern. It's something I've actually been talking with my teammates about just a little bit ago in terms of splitting it up. So typically, because we would normally have these short stint lengths and the short races, we'd run at 2x fuel. For this race, we're running 1x. So the cars are going to their maximum ability. So for GTs, you're looking at about an hour. And then for hypercars, you're around that 40-minute mark. It's going to give or take a little bit depending on how teams decide they want to play their fuel strategy. You obviously can adjust mixture in the car. For Daytona, it's a unique challenge because you want to have as much power as you can on those straight lines. And getting into the infield section, you know, maybe you pull back a little bit there, and that's where you decide to focus your efforts to pull back some. Or if you get into traffic, that's one of my strategies, obviously, is tucking back whenever I'm caught up behind people. Hypercars have a little bit more option there because you're generally going to run into GT traffic slowing you down more than GTs getting slowed down by other cars, particularly today, because as you've seen and said, the hypercars kind of dominate the field in terms of numbers. Still good number of GTs in there. I guess it is about even at this point, since I don't seem to have quite all of the teams in that we're supposed to be here that have been signed up, so we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it should be a good run. The driver swaps are covered by the fuel that's going to have to go in, assuming that it's not a super short splash, just for a single lap. But I anticipate that for those who are going to be swapping, that's not going to be a concern. They'll have already had their drivers change out for what they're going to do, and they'll just kind of motor on. So yeah, we'll see how they split up the loads and what that does in terms of just making them get through their stints and having it all right at the end.
Let's chat a little bit about the cars as well before we get underway for the season as well. Just how is it different to what we saw in 2023, where of course we had a great addition to the series, having GTP / LMDH, whatever you want to call them, into the series, and of course we enjoyed having them in 2023. Just how are these cars in 2024 different to what we saw by the course of the final round in November last season?
So overall, they are fairly similar in terms of just overall performance. I mean, a lot of the underlying physics for the cars that are already coming in haven't really changed. There have been some BOP adjustments, some quality of life adjustments, both in the physics and in the graphics. So they've mostly maintained their characteristics. Some cars like the Porsche 963 isn't quite as bad in a straight line as it was previously. I know the Toyota GR10 has gotten a bit of an update to make it a little bit more acceptable for drivers to run. Being an all-wheel drive car, it's a bit of a handful that not many are in a position to want to take on that challenge and extract the most pace. But certainly, the biggest change to date is the tires. We've overhauled the tire model. Hypercar is getting hit the most, and GT's also getting a pretty big change. GT's, they have a tire that's based on the Michelin H1 that runs in IMSA. We have the most information and background on that tire, so we've been able to look at that and pull it in. But basically, the biggest difference this year is that you have one compound. Before, it was based on Studio 397, where you had soft, medium, hard, and a wet. And this year, it's just the medium compound and the wet, if you want to consider that too. But as far as just a racing slick, you have one choice and you got to make it last. To try and put in a strategy, we've split it up so that way drivers have the option of changing 1, 2, 3, or all 4 tires. So that can help with pit stops, shaving a second or two off. Maybe you just change 1 tire if you're really heating one up, if you have a flat spot, or maybe you do 3 if you're not really cranking too much on one particular corner of the car. And it'll just get you a little bit, but maybe that's all you need when it comes down to that getting out in front of that car that you've been just aggressively racing with all race, and that makes the difference. So we're hoping that it's enough to still make it interesting, but I guess we'll see how it plays out in practice. And then for the hypercars, the biggest change is that the tires are a lot more reflective of what they do in real life in terms of a heating profile. So they will actually take about 2 laps before they're coming into a proper temperature, and so you'll see optimal lap times running around 5, 6, 7. Maybe 4 for this track because it's a little bit longer, but it's going to take longer. Your drivers can't just go out and slam it like they're pulling a hot lap. They actually have to baby it around a little bit, or they're end up off into a wall or a fence or a field or maybe a GT, and that won't be great for anyone. So those are the big changes.
And just finally as well, just personally, what are you, as we've got a few minutes remaining in warm-up at the moment, what are you expecting from Daytona here today in terms of this race? We mentioned the challenges there. It's going to be difficult for track limits, for traffic. What are the particular challenges and things that are going to be big talking points today for this particular race?
Well, you've covered the good ones so far. I mean, really, multi-class interaction is going to be the biggest thing, I think, in terms of just what's going to change the makeup of the race. I mean, drivers have already basically dialed in their setups. There's really not a whole lot at this point that's going to change pace. And the Mustangs and the Mercedes are obviously showing really strong performance over the course of a run. There might be some drop off because tire wear is going to be high for those cars versus some of the other ones, but I mean, they're probably going to be out towards the front. And then it's just going to be a matter of managing how you deal with traffic, how you're able to facilitate passes and not get caught up in angry moments, let the red mist descend and just avoid other people's destruction. And if you can do that, then you'll end up on top, on top of being consistent yourself. Don't make any mistakes. Don't throw it away at the bus stop. Don't slide out or anything like that. Just stay consistent, keep banging out good strong laps, and then don't get any track cuts. That's going to be a huge thing, because man, that bus stop is just brutal. It really, like, you can just look at the apex, and if you're too far over on that curbing, man, it just nails you. So look for that. You might actually have some drive-throughs as we go through, probably even in the I'd say even in the first stint before the first fuel stops.
Let's see how it goes. Ross, thanks very much for chatting to us once again, giving us a bit of an update on where we are with these cars in 2024 and a bit of a preview as to what we can expect from Daytona. Thanks very much for giving us a bit of info, and hope you enjoy the race.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be a banger. You guys are going to have a lot of fun commenting this one. I mean, I'll be around in the background if something happens, but yeah, cheers to you. Good luck.
Thanks very much, Ross Smith there, able to chat to us a little bit about where we are with the 2024 cars and preview a little bit this race. It's the 2.4 hours of Daytona in the opening round of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship for 2024. Myself, Ewan O'Leary, Bradley Dalton alongside me. Bradley, it's going to be very interesting indeed. We're in the final seconds of warm-up right now. This start going to be pretty important as well when we get to it, and everybody's going to be worried about that first braking zone down towards turn 1 in what's going to be a very, very full grid in a few moments' time when we begin this race.
Yeah, that run into turn 1 is going to be so important for that first lap, first corner. It's get all the jitters out of the way, get ready to go, make your way through the International Horseshoe, get through the dogleg, get through the infield portion for the first time, and that, I think, is going to be real important. We see Daniel Kirby here running through this infield, coming out of turn 6, turn 7, onto Speedway turn 1 and Speedway turn 2. But really, it is that turn 1 that's going to set the tone for these 2.4 hours, Ewan. It's going to be that point that sets up how things are going to go. And if anyone watched any of the iRacing broadcast this morning, I was up, I watched a little bit of it. GTP's turn 1, 5 or 6 GTP cars immediately taken out before they could even hit turn 1 from a bottleneck on the grid. I don't want to see any of that here. And of course, here in VWSC, it's going to be very, very important for these drivers to get a clean kickoff. As I said earlier, this sets the tone for the season. This is what is going to determine how the rest of these 13 rounds go, and whether you're playing catch up or whether you are set to go here all the way through. And I think we are about to kick off 2.4 hours of absolute excitement.
Let's hope so. We are, well, everyone's back in the garages now. They're going to get themselves back out onto the grid very shortly as well. And we can hopefully bring you through the grid once that takes place as well. And let's do just that with Daniel Kirby on the front. Peugeot last year, it's the Isota this year around. It's Ernest Bernardo alongside with Mikhail Dinu and Mike Bell on the second row. Timon Suvic is back in the Acura again in 5th place ahead of Adrian Rice in the new Alpine. It's Bradley Sellers in the Acura 2 in 7th place ahead of Brian Hall, an all Acura row 4. Riley Wyverns is the first of the Ferraris in 9th ahead of Magnus Dahlgren, previous Ferrari driver, now in the Lamborghini to round out the top 10. It's Jeffrey Ellis in 11th ahead of the pole sitter in Hypercar AM. That's Philippe Diacati, Jerry Chen and Guillaume Benker on the next row, both AM drivers as well. Michael Locke has moved up to the Hypercar class. He's alongside Benjamin Porteseed with Craig Pullen and Vinicius Gonçalves, another 2 AM drivers on row 9. Norm Graff and Tom Mountjoy round at the top 20 with the final Hypercar in Maximilian Putrovici is in 21st. His name slightly cut off by his car there. Alessio Neto is on the pole for GT3, Assassin Sobers and Yuki Takanashi. Johnny Gutierrez and David Yunt are on row 13 with Brandon Kant and Robert Strachan on the next row. That's a Ford Ferrari battle on row 14. Matthew Overton and Vasilis Katrinakis round out the top 30 with Josh Lepetri, the GT3 and pole sitter, in 31st. Joe Wilkes is 32nd and another one of the Ford Mustangs. Alongside another Mustang, Ollie Koyanlati is in 33rd and Matt Pierce. Then it's Dave Coors and James Bowders on the 18th row of the grid. That's Acura versus Porsche on that final row of the grid. 36 lined up here in this split of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. And it's a very, very full grid indeed. We've got 21 hypercars and 15 GT3s, Bradley. That's exactly what Ross was talking about a few moments ago. It is slightly overpopulated by hypercars, such as the excitement surrounding them, and that means that they're going to have a lot of GT3s to pass, but the GT3s are going to have to let through a lot of cars over the course of the race.
Yeah, I really, really like the GTPs, the hypercars, but GT3 tends to be the class that I find myself driving and I find myself loving. And that is not a testament to my lack of skill. That is just, I tend to find the cars a little bit more fun and a little bit more manageable for me. So yes, it's a skill issue, I'll say it. But these GTP cars are going to find some challenges through the hypercars. Are going to have a good time for them. Again, not a lot of cars to pass, but the GT3s are going to find themselves looking in the mirrors a lot. And I would say give it about a good 10 minutes of running, and then we're going to see these GT3 cars really get in trouble and get into a challenge. And they are going to be doing a lot of looking in the mirror. We'll talk about it a bit more once that starts happening, but that is going to be one of your big keys of this race is traffic management. How can you use that to get a pass? How can you use that to defend your position? And how do you get through without getting absolutely totaled early on? It's going to be very, very fun to watch. And I'm really, really excited to see how things play out and when we get this green flag going.
Interesting that the Thursday Night League had sort of the opposite effect going on with more GT3s than hypercars, which is certainly the opposite to what we've got here on the Saturday. For whatever reason, can't really give you an explanation for that, but it is true. 2 hours 24 on the clock then, making up the 2.4 hours, and we're going to be with you throughout the entirety of it, of course, here on the JPB YouTube channel and CMS YouTube as well. Daniel Kirby leads the field out of the bus stop on the pit limiter for the first time. Interesting that he's chosen the Esota, actually, the Esota Fraschini in the hypercar class, which is, I'm not sure how that popular that's going to be in real life. It's a privateer entry, but good that we've got it here at the at Daytona and in this league for this time around. Trying to give any reasons as to why that maybe is the strongest at the moment, other than the fact that Daniel Kirby is driving it. According to our stat sheet, anyway, it seems to be sort of the most level across the board. Doesn't have any particular areas where it is the best, but it's just decent over all the areas, and that might stand Daniel Kirby in good stead over the course of the season. Although it maybe doesn't matter what car he drives. Very quick driver, as we saw in the Peugeot last year, ending up being the hypercar champion. Let's see if he can do it again in 2024 as he starts from pole position. It's the Virtual World Sports Car Championship for 2024. The 2.4 hours of Daytona is underway, and Daniel Kirby will have the jump on the field in the Esota in towards turn 1. He's clear of the rest of the field with Bernaldo 8 tenths behind already. It's Dino and Bell who are closest through turn 1, battling for third and fourth at the moment, as the GT3s will also get underway here in a few moments' time. It looks like a clean start for the hypercars as we get the season underway.
Very good to see the hypercars through, and now the GT3s here, led by the Mercedes driver Valiso Neto, and the AMG GT3 in the XRL Esports driver will get the jump there with a car right behind him. And as we get going here, that is Sobers behind, and we get the jump, and the GT3s will be underway for the 2.4 hours of Daytona. All classes are away, and it's a dive into turn 1 early, and already Sachin Sobers is wanting to think about how quick can he get to the front and take this GT3 field through. And all of our cars are through down into the International Horseshoe for the first time of 2 hours and 2.4 hours. And here we go, Ewan. I think we are good. Back to the hypercars up front here, and we see Adrian Rice, who is trying to make a challenge here in the Alpine to move forward for 5th place.
It's been a decent start, but I can tell you that Benjamin Porteous Heath has been off in the Esota, down in 21st now, and he's considerably off the back of the field as well. As a result of that, he's already 30 seconds behind Daniel Kirby after only half a lap, so he's clearly ran into some problems. I think it was out of turn 6 and on the run up towards the banking, but for the most part it's been a good start for both classes. Here comes Bradley Sellers on the outside of Adrian Rice as he looks for the move in towards turn 1, although he can't quite do it. Not sure who we're seeing here, but it's a replay of something. still someone on their own. Benjamin importantly thief. I'm not sure where the incident is going to be, but there's nobody around him at the moment, and for whatever... here we are. This is the incident. It was at turn 6. So did he get help here, or did he get it wrong under brakes is the next question, and he got it wrong himself there under brakes. Slight graze on the wall. Think he'll be okay, but it has dropped into the back of the field.
Yeah, that was a just early race. Cold brakes, cold tires, and sometimes it sets you up for a bit of a problem. And the good news is, now that we've got a lap under our belts, most of these drivers won't see that. But that is a consideration for these hypercar classes, is sometimes you do see the moments of just hard under braking, and I'm curious to see how many more times that happens. Timon Subic here going up the inside into the bus stop. Very, very good pass on Ernest Bernaldo, and gets his way up into 3rd place, and will continue to move forward here. So that Acura seems to be a very, very quick car, which according to our stat sheet, is actually pretty slow under braking, but tends to be very good in corners, and the driver's doing well to kind of put their skills in the cars and the strengths of the cars together to move the way forward here. And Timon Subic there in the number 10 in 3rd place will continue to push and try to make headway on the leader Kirby as we go through just a few minutes in.
Ronaldo with a big out-braking manoeuvre there. He was outbroken himself, really, and he's down to 5th now after being 2nd off of the start of this race. He's now been overtaken as well by Bell for 4th position. Mike Bell, that is, now in 4th. So Ernest Bernardo, in trying to hold on to that place, has actually lost one in the turn number 1. As we're being reminded, by the way, by Paul Albertson in the chat, and thanks to him, most of the GT3 teams will have driver changes throughout the day, and that is a case up and down the field. It's not all at Le Mans where we're seeing the driver changes now. It may even be throughout the season too, elsewhere than Le Mans, and so look out for that over the course of the race. That's going to be something for us to keep on top of, and well, try to, because there are already a lot of cars in the race, and we might well be doubling the amount of drivers in the race up to about 70. We're not quite going to get that high, but we are going to see a few more on the grid. There's certainly no doubt about that. Into the bus stop chicane once again here at Daytona. You know it's time. It's a pretty quick lap around here, just over a minute and a half. And we go on board with Bernaldo at the moment in 5th position, trying to chase down Mike Bell for 4th in the Lamborghini.
Mike Bell in the Lamborghini in 4th place. And the Lamborghini, a good car and a very good driver of Mike Bell holding on here. And we see new lap times and new best lap times continuing to come in. Subic currently with the best lap time there in 3rd. And we continue to watch that through. Ernest Bernaldo doing very, very well in the Porsche, sticking behind down through turn 1. And now we come through into the International Horseshoe yet again. And this is a very, very quick lap, as you mentioned, Ewan. And we are just continuing on and on to watch these laps tick down. And for these drivers here, it is just a matter of consistency. Keep your head checked in, keep the mind focused, and push through as much as you can, because 2.4 hours will go very, very quick for them in this race. But it can ruin your race entirely for just one small moment, one blink, one wrong misstep. You try to shake the hand off, whatever it may be, at the wrong moment, and you break traction, and it can end an entire race, an entire charge through.
3 seconds is the gap at the front of the field, by the way, for Daniel Kirby, who still leads at the front of Hypercar. In Hypercar Am, it's still Philippe Ducati who's leading the way by 2 seconds out of Guillaume Benck in 2nd place. They're 12th, 13th in the Hypercar Am field, and now we're into the GT3s already. Alessio Neto still leads at the front, but it's further down towards the back where these guys are being lapped, and side by side indeed between Katrinakis and Kajanati in the Porsche versus the Ford battle. The new Ford Mustang down the inside, and there's contact. Vasilis Katrinakis goes for a huge slide. I've no idea how he saved it, but he has done. He will lose a spot, but that was a remarkable save from the driver of the 041.
Oh, that was such a good save. Lots of driver awareness, heads-up driving, and a lot of skill and a little bit of luck being shown there for the save there from that 041 Porsche and keeping things forward. And now he's going to have Josh Lippertree in for a little bit of a look as well in the Ferrari in the background. But that was a very, very brave and bold move there from the Mustang. And oh, he runs off on the inside curb And that grass there is not very kind. That's going to open the door up for Josh in the 424 Ferrari. And I have a feeling as we come around through turn 2 here and turn 3, there will be a good run from the Ferrari to get the slipstream and try to get this pass done on the Porsche.
Yeah, he's a little bit rattled maybe by that bit of contact into turn 1. His tyres as well are going to be a little bit all over the place. That is one notable thing about R-Factor 2, is that the tyres are pretty fragile sometimes if you're a bit abusive to them, so you've got to be careful with them. And obviously that wasn't really any fault of his own, Katrinakis, but it will, the tyres don't care about that. They will be very warm, I think, is another statement there. Daniel Kirby makes his way around them though. There is the interior of the Asotta Fraschini, and what a beautiful car it is as well. Seems to be pretty quick as well at this stage. Kirby leading, but only by 2.5 seconds. He's being run pretty close by Michael Dinu early on in this one as he completes another lap. That's the end of lap 6 here at Daytona.
End of lap 6, and the one thing that I'm gathering is all these drivers are very, very focused and really pushing things early. I didn't know how the drivers would play strategy. I didn't know if they would want to do a little bit of conservation early on or what they would be looking to do, but based on times, based on the on-track action we're seeing, nobody wants to play the long game here. They want to go very, very fast and go ahead and push their way forward as much as possible. Daniel Kirby, 3.5 second gap on Michael Dinu behind in the Aerolab Porsche 963. And we mentioned the Asotta Fraschini and it being a car that, you know, we kind of didn't know what to think of. And I have to say, I'm very, very impressed. Daniel Kirby is making this car look like a winner all the way through. And as he goes through, again, continuing to get his way around the GTs and pushing forward, it's great driving. 3.5 seconds to gap out on the lead for the GTPs, the hypercar class, and I see that gap continuing to open up a little bit. Daniel Kirby wants to move it forward early on.
Can I just preface all this, by the way, by saying that I don't think this is what's going to happen to the Asotta in its first real race, but anyway, it's doing well here, and that's all that matters. Well, the Ferrari's off the road there at the bus stop chicane. What was that all about? It's just behind one of the Acuras. I think it must be Yuka Takinashi who's gone off there in the Ferrari 296, and for whatever, here he is. You see him here. He bounced over the first curb and it looks okay. Oh no, he's just gone in a bit too hot to that one really. He's ended up in the grass and he's just had to take a trip through the grass to get back on again. Well, it's not as bad as it could have been, but he will lose out on that contention for third. In fact, he'll lose third place entirely to David Yunt, who's now in third, and he loses fourth indeed to Brandon Gant as well. So a costly mistake for Yuki Takanashi.
Yeah, I don't think Ferrari will appreciate their car being used as a lawnmower, but he may be able to invoice Daytona for a little bit of yard work and landscaping that he did there through the bus stop. Of course, in real life, the bus stop, the grass there at the bus stop was turned into tarmac starting this year, which will start a conversation, I'm sure, in real life about track limits and some different things, but all of that was done in the name of safety, and you can see one of the prime examples of why here as we see a lap here on the inside of the hypercar getting around the Mustang of Johnny Gutierrez. And yeah, it's, you know, I'm curious, what's your position on that, Ewan? What is your position on the grass being replaced with tarmac?
Not a good one, if I'm honest with you. It's Daytona's got enough tarmac around already on its road course, don't need any more, and it only means that 24 hours next week we'll be chatting about track limits for the entire 24 hours instead of anything else. So I'm pretty annoyed about it to us. I actually didn't know until about 6 hours ago when someone told me, speaking on the sort of, because it's obviously Daytona week pretty much in sim racing. Everyone is doing a Daytona 24 hours of some description here this week weekend in sim racing, and yeah, I learned it through that and really disappointed to find it out as well, if I'm totally honest, but there we are. We'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later on. For now, we're only quarter of an hour or so into this race. We're on board with Johnny Gutierrez in one of the Ford Mustangs, a new machine on the grid, on the GT3 grid. He's heading down the inside of Yuki Takanashi into turn 1. Don't get too late on the brakes or you'll lose it all, but he does pull it up nicely, and he is up another place to 6th place now in GT3.
Yeah, Johnny Gutierrez with a good move there, taking that Ford Mustang and using all of its braking ability to really send it up the inside. And of course, the Mustang is something you can be very confident in, but from what I understand, the Mustang is not kind on its tires. And here, with these tire compounds in R-Factor 2, and especially with these cars, that is something that they're gonna have to be mindful of as we run through. Johnny Gutierrez will have to watch those tires, but can be very, very brave all the way through. You can have some confidence in that Mustang, and it's a very, very good car, and I really like a Ford Mustang, I'm not gonna lie. Probably the best GT3 to me is the C8. That's just because I'm a big Chevy fan, but this Mustang looks very comfortable all the way around the field and all the way around this track through all of its unique points. Fast, slow, side by side. It seems like Johnny Gutierrez has a good handle on this car and can continue pushing forward here in the GT3 class.
I didn't enjoy the idea of a Ford Mustang GT3, but now it's actually come to fruition. It's looking good, and Takinashi is not enjoying the bus stop chicane. He's off again through there, cuts across the turn, and he loses another second or so. Robert Strachan is not too far away now in another one of the Ferraris, and so that may well be a fight that re-emerges, although has Strachan got the run that he really needs through the bus stop to challenge here? He will be receiving a bit of the slipstream, of course, on the way down towards turn number 1. Will there be a move from Strachan? I don't think so. He's a bit too far back for the moment. We have had a pit stop, by the way, from one of the hypercars. We've got Vinicius Gonçalves in the pit lane in the Ferrari 499P. That's their hypercar, of course, and he's dropping now below the GT3s already in this race. That is a bit of a shame to see for him down in the pit lane. Let's see what happened to him. This is into the West Horseshoe. He slides, he slips, and he spins to the inside of the corner.
Yeah, that's a unique place to lose it there in the West Horseshoe. That's not, you don't usually see drivers spin and then catch it on the inside. Usually it's they overshoot the braking zone and go wide, so that's a unique little spin there.
Bizarre, but what happens at low speed with these prototypes, sometimes they're not particularly set up for that. They're more set up for the sort of high speed stuff, but he is back out there on the circuit again, which is a good thing. He's now a lap behind the next driver in Hypercar Ram, though. Could be a long afternoon for him over the course of the next 2 hours. This is the battle for 7th place. Brian Hall is chasing down Bradley Sellers at the moment. These guys are around 20 seconds down on Daniel Kirby, who still leads at the moment. Now, interesting to note a bit of tyre difference at the very front of the field. There's 4 seconds between 1 and 2, as you can see, Kirby and Daniel. But there is a tyre difference. Kirby on the mediums at the moment, whereas Mikael Dainu is on the hard compound tyres, and the only hypercar indeed to do that. I'm not sure how much to even trust that, to be honest, because sometimes it's not always correct on R-Factor 2 whether or what we're being shown. But if that is the case, then that Porsche's in a decent position there to sort of be in a better situation tyre wear wise, but also be only 4 seconds off the lead.
Yeah, if that is the case, that Dinu is truly on that harder compound and is only 4 seconds off, that is going to set things up. And remember, we still have 2 hours and 7 minutes. So if you think about it, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and 2 hours and 7 minutes is not that much time, especially if Dinu is the only person on the hard tire at the moment. That's some good pace in the Porsche. And I'm a little curious to see where at the end of 2 hours and 7 minutes and 23 seconds now, where things end up, because that is, man, that's scary to see.
We are being told that he is indeed on hard compound tyres, so that is a scary thing. I know that graphic says that, but I just have difficulty trusting it sometimes because of other leagues that I've done where you almost never can trust it. So I'm willing to let someone else take the fall. I've been told that's correct. So there we are. He is indeed on the hard tyres. He's made up a place, as you can see there, in the Porsche from where he qualified in 3rd position so far today. So he's having a good time of things in the opening part of this race. In terms of battles going on in Hypercar, there are still a couple, but the closest of them is probably between Riley Wyans and Craig Pullen for 13th overall. They're not in the same class in Hypercar. They're in Hypercar Pro and Am, but they may well be fighting for position very, very soon. But what we're seeing here early on, as we're not particularly surprised to see, is just a bit of a spreading out here for the first 20 minutes or so. It's no longer nose to tail as we saw right at the very start. We're starting to see a bit of a settling down now that we're into the traffic and we're settling into the race.
Yeah, the drivers spent very early on pushing and going through, and now I think it is the settling down. Everybody's starting to breathe and relax and really just enjoy their time here on track. It's a long race of 2.4 hours, so the drivers are going to just settle down. This is the point where you don't want to do a bonehead move. You don't want to settle things off. You have to remember you have plenty of time to make passes. You have plenty of time to go through top to bottom. So the drivers just need to breathe a little. They need to relax, cut out the mistakes, and conserve those tires. Play the long strategy game. And I say this every time I say this. It's one thing for me as the commentator. Oh no! Who is that? That is Maximilian filling off in the Isoda. I think that was just a full-blown lockup of the rear brakes. Relax and breathe, ladies and gentlemen. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, Maximilian Putroficki, it is in the Isotta Frastini, down to 8th place in the Hypercar AM field at the moment and 20th place overall. The final of them is sort of with the rest of the group. The only other hypercar below him is Vinicius Gonçalves, who we've already talked about so far today. But yeah, it is important to just keep. Oh no, and he is starting to lose his way a little bit. One mistake is turning into the next. He's skating across the grass and back onto the road again. It was very nearly collected by one of the GT3s. I'm not sure whether this is just the angle that we're seeing this from, but he's got no rear wing, and that is indeed the case. So that can't be helped. Has he? Yeah. Well, it seems to be there from some angles and not there from others. But that is probably why he's struggling so much. He's got no rear wing. Let's see where he lost it. It was in a side-by-side battle with one of the others. Oh, he loses it out on the grass. Spins around once. Just hit the wall there, but from there, it just keeps getting worse and worse, I'd imagine, with the tyres dramatically overheating. And then he slides his way through the kink at turn 4. Big spin as well. And well, all of a sudden he's lost it there, so I don't know whereabouts he will have lost that, but he had it in the last clip, so I don't understand why it will have there's where he lost it. So what was he doing side by side with someone through the S's with no rear wing? What was that all about? It wasn't this lap, but anyway, he's struggling clearly, and that's probably the reason why. Although I can't believe at this point here he hasn't realised he's got no rear wing, but clearly he doesn't know, and he goes spinning into the grass at the bus stop, very nearly collecting one of the Fords.
That Mustang driver there, a great heads-up driving in that GT3 to keep your head forward. I believe that was Gant, but Maximilian, just unfortunate there for Putroficki and not having a great time. Brian Hall here in the Acura is putting some pressure and continuing to try to move forward and doing a very, very good job of it as we watch here in the Acura, continuing to put pressure and try to move forward up from 8th place. And again, I'll finish my thought. It's a long race. Just breathe and relax, which I can tell you even means that for drivers that have moments early on, like Maximilian there, you can breathe and relax and come back from that. It's going to be hard, but it's doable here. Craig Pullen and the Porsche 963 coming around out of the West Horseshoe and continuing to try to chase down Benjamin Porteous Heath and trying to chase him down. His name's cut off a little bit there. And the Isoda, and it's just continue pressure all the way through. But again, remember guys, you don't have to do it with 2 hours to go, because it's not about where you're going to be at the 2 hour mark. It's about where you're at when that clock says 0 minutes and that checkered flag drops.
Yeah, that's the important point in the race. 2 hours remaining then in the 2.4 hours of Daytona. We're almost half an hour complete already, and we're almost at the stage as well where the pit window is opening for the hypercars. If we're going by Ross Smith's calculation that they can do 40 minutes in a stint roughly, and 3 times 40 is about 2 hours. And so the pit window will open very, very shortly, but they will be able to realistically go another 10-15 minutes with that Ferrari making its way in regardless here. Not sure which of them it was, whether it's Gonçalves again maybe. Don't think it is, but either way, It's Michael Locke, actually, in the hypercar class, having moved up after running in hypercar AM last season. He's in the hypercar class this time around. Another thing to contend with, Bradley, here, we've got darkness already, as around goes Craig Pullen in the Porsche. That's an awkward spin for him at the International Horseshoe. He'll get out ahead of Jerry Chen, thankfully. But yeah, it's dark now, and it never gets really dark at Daytona because of the lights, but that is something to contend with the track temperature going down rapidly, and of course the sort of change of ambience, if you like, over the course of the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that there is some nighttime here with the race, because it does provide that different challenge. It sounds crazy, but that difference in night and day can really mess with your vision and really mess with your perspective, because you might lose sight of your braking zone. You might just, things look different at night than it does during the day. And if you don't believe me, think about how your house looks at night versus how your house looks at 9 o'clock in the morning versus 5 p.m. It's all different to you. So these drivers, it adds a unique challenge, because now they've got to be able to spot their braking points. They've got to be confident in their driving with the dark. And of course, there are track lights around Daytona, but in real life, the track lights are only on, I believe it's 30%. So the drivers still rely on their headlights. And it looks like that is replicated here in Sim, that the track lights are on, they're just not very on. And as we hit the top of 2 hours remaining, it is still Bradley Sellers here, who is on the charge in 8th place, trying to put the challenge on Brian Hall ahead. You can see there that number 10 Acura doing very well to go through as they contend with a little bit of traffic there from a GT3.
Interesting that you say 30%, by the way, because previously I remember it being 10% of their actual power. I was told earlier on by someone else, because I was researching around a bit, that it's 20%, and you've said it's 30%, so I don't know what it is. It's around there, though. I think you get the point. They're turned down anyway. It's not like the Daytona 500, where you can't tell at all that it's dark, or name other oval race. It's a bit different to that, but even so. And indeed, some of the lights are actually turned off entirely, because they get right in your face as you're approaching some of the braking zones here on the road course, and so you do need some of them turned off entirely. But you are correct, they are turned down from their maximum capacity. As we go side by side now for 6th place, Bradley Sellers looking for positions on the inside here of Brian Hall. It is indeed for 7th, actually, and not 6th. He goes inside of Hall, round the outside of Katerinakis in the Porsche, and Bradley Sellers is up to 7th place in the Acura.
A clean pass there, and utilizing a bit of that GT traffic, that GT3 traffic as you can, because look now, behind Bradley Sellers there, it is Brian Hall that is now stuck behind 2 GT3s as we hit the dogleg. And that, again, we talked about earlier, that traffic, that is that strategy game. Bradley Sellers looking ahead, seeing that car. That is great heads-up driving from Bradley Sellers in the Acura.
Yeah, it is a good start to the season for him. He didn't have a bad season in 2023 either, by the way. Had a decent time of things. He's back again in the Acura this time around. As someone is mentioning or asking in the YouTube chat earlier on, by the way, no Lamborghini Huracans this season. Saw quite a few of them, especially in GT3 AM last season. They did particularly well in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship, but none this season, and a few displaying their displeasure at that, which is fair enough. But not many GT3 AMs, I think, is the real takeaway I'm getting from this opening race here, Bradley. Josh LePetri, Matt Pierce and James Bowders are the only 3 GT3 AMs here in the field this season, which is a surprising amount, really, for a class, and hopefully we will get a few more throughout the remainder of the 12 rounds we'll have after this one.
Yeah, I know there was some talk before the race. We had a conversation about it, and some of it was down to just last-second changes with driver signups and some different things. But I am expecting that as the season goes on, probably starting with our next round, round 2 in Qatar, I would say that this GT3 AM class is going to grow quite a bit, and I would expect to see more GT3 AMs join and really push that envelope and move forward, because getting more GT3s on the track would be awesome to see.
Would. Flash of the lights from Philippe Diacati, and there has been a change for the lead here in Hypercar AM, by the way, as Guillaume Benck has gotten into the lead in the Cadillac ahead of the Acura. And oh dear, I don't know if there was contact, but one of the Ford Mustangs is off the road. Now let's hope that it doesn't come straight back on into the side of these guys. Wow, that was close. I think they all got away with it. Oh, just about. It was the 040 Ford Mustang of Olli Karanjelati in the Ford Mustang, and he's got damage. He's pulling off to the side of the road, and he is going back to the pit lane. I think that is going to be the end of the day for that Ford Mustang that clearly had damage. This is the moment here with Guillaume Benck, who goes down the inside in the Cadillac. There's space for both of them, but the Ford Mustang just runs out of it, and goodness me, this is close to a disaster.
Yeah, very, very fortunate for the barriers to be there. Oh, very lucky for the barrier, because I think if the barriers hadn't been there, you would have just came right out into the West Horseshoe and would have collected, there's no telling how many cars. But that's an odd one too, because the Hypercar on the inside, I keep wanting to call them GTPs, so if you hear me go back and forth on it, apologies. LMP1s as well. But they run
name, LMP1.
Yeah, it is.
I don't care who doesn't like it. LMP1's a real name. Oh, Ross is back. Maybe. No more LMP1s. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this.
We're banned in the first round of the season, and we've only been going half an hour. Sorry. Anyway, hypercars, yes. Yeah, what were we saying about hypercars? I can't even remember.
It was weird to see that, because the Hypercar had the room on the inside, and it genuinely just looked like a mess up from the GT3. It looks like he just had like a moment of just brain weakness and ran it wide, hit the grass, and unfortunately when you're carrying that much speed through the dog leg, you hit the grass and it's just ice, and it can be hard to get your car to come back through. We see the same thing in the horseshoe when drivers cut the horseshoe a little bit and then the grass completely sends them on. We saw it earlier with a Ferrari, and I can't remember which Ferrari it was, but it goes to show that you've got to keep your brain turned on for the entire race top to bottom here, Ewan, and it's very, very important.
That is certainly true. Now, we've got a good fight in GT3 as David Yunt has recently overtaken Sachin Sobers. The Mercedes is attempting to come back at him, and we're on board with him right now in the slipstream down towards turn number one with one of the hypercars on the outside of him. Skates under, brakes slightly to Sobers, but uses the ABS to just go in a little bit deeper than those hypercars are really able to do, especially when you're coming off the banking like that. You can see just in the top right hand side of your screen in the mirror there that one of the Acuras is sort of in the headlights, in the rear view mirror here, looking for a way right or left. Yep, they're going to pop through on the right hand side. Sobers can retake the line now for the kink in the straight, and now in towards the West Horseshoe. Oh no, he's made contact!
Oh.
So much later on the brakes from the Mercedes, and it's another remarkable save from the hypercar driver there, because the difference in braking performance was remarkable.
Yeah, it's very, very amazing to see the braking difference, and that was, I had to hold my breath for a second. That scared me. That was a very, very tough moment, and it goes to, we talked about traffic and different things, and I do want to point out, if this is your first time watching a mixed class race, seeing hypercars and LMGT3s on track together, and you're kind of confused about how the rules work, and you say, why doesn't the GT3 just pull over, stop, let the, hypercars through? This is not Formula One. We talk about this a lot. Blue flags, it is not Formula One. You do not have to pull over and stop and let a faster car through. It is the rule of the faster car to make a clean pass, and it's your job as the slower car to not make it too hard for the person, but you don't have to necessarily compromise your race. They're not expecting you to pull over, stop, grab a cup of coffee, and then get back on track. And that's something that you're going to see go back and forth a lot, and you hear a lot of conversation about it. But we're seeing it time and time again go to prove that navigating that slower traffic is really going to prove a challenge for hypercar.
It's a dance.
That's conversation number one about that, for those of you counting at home. Just keep yourself adding those up if you want at home, because It's going to be more. Battle for fourth in the overall standings in the Hypercars as well, between Mike Bell and Ernest Bernaldo, is ongoing. This Porsche seems to be working its way into the race now. After a pretty shaky start from Bernaldo, I think it's fair to say. He's now looking for fourth and looking to try and overtake Mike Bell in the Lamborghini.
Yeah, he's doing good to follow here, Ernest Bernaldo is, against Mike Bell. And this run through Speedway 3 and 4 is really where you could earn a lot of time, especially when you're a hypercar. See the lights flashing saying, hey, GT3, I'm coming around, watch out. But Ernest Bernaldo being about 0.2 of a second back as we hit the tri-oval is in a good spot. And watch this around the outside into turn 1. Can Ernest Bernaldo make this stick against Mike Bell and the Lamborghini? Hard on the brakes as we come through, and you can see the Lamborghini a little shaky there on the brakes, and the Porsche very, very steady through turn 1. Very, very good to not try to force that move around the outside. It stays behind and is going to continue to try to spot this move through. A little hard on the brakes there and a little slide, but overall clean driving, clean heads-up driving, and Ernest Bernaldo will live to fight another day and is continue to push forward against Mike Bell.
Yep, he's going to have to, but that wasn't a great line through the International Horseshoe on that occasion. He's just putting one of the hypercars a lap down now already, and he will have a bit of work to do from here to catch back up to Mike Bell again and try and come back through. Sebastian Sobers is still close to David Yunt, by the way, second in GT3, and these guys are still a good half an hour away from their first pit stops of the day. We're expecting 2 stops in the GT3s today as opposed to the 3 that we're going to see in the hypercar classes, as re-emerging onto the road is one of the hypercars. Not sure who that is, but just up in front of these two we saw someone off the road. It did look like the Cadillac of Guillaume Benck, but we'll see if it actually was. Out of the horseshoe he goes, and he just seems to get that wrong. I don't really know how, but anyway, he seems to be steering a bit bizarrely. Oh, and he rejoins straight in front of someone. That's not and gets a flash of the lights there, and a bit of an earful for that one. Side by side through the kink, probably not a good idea, but lets him go finally. That wasn't a great display of driving, unfortunately, but he's back on the road again and still in the lead in the hypercar ramp.
Yeah, Benck is probably going to be getting an earful there for that, because that was that was a scary move. And of course, remember when you're rejoining the track, boys and girls, to do it safely and to ensure that you're not cutting off anyone behind you, and doing a very, very good job there of showing how not to join back. Now, Benjamin Porteus Heath here in the Isotta and Jerry Chin there in the Porsche 963. It's about a 9-second gap between second and third place here in the Hypercar AM class. And you might say, hey, 9 seconds, that's a huge gap. But again, remember, we still have over an hour and 45 minutes of racing left to go here in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship from CMSRacing.com. And of course, that means plenty of time here to see challenges and to see heartbreak and to see victory. And of course, we're taking you all the way through top to bottom. And this battle between Mike Bell and Ernest Bernaldo continues to brew. And this is the battle that I want to see unfold and really, really see how it plays. Because Bernaldo has put a challenge time and time again on Mike Bell. And the last time they came through turn 1 together, Ernest Bernaldo had to play it smart for a minute and play it smooth and safe, but then hit the International Horseshoe, and he lost the front end of all sides. So wondering what he can do in terms of making a run here on another attempt into turn 1.
He's a lot closer this time. He's already done the work to close back in. It didn't take him very long. Mike Bell, wow, that was close. One of the Hypercar series is being lapped. Oh, it is Timon Subic, excuse me. So it is a battle for third indeed. Mike Bell with a huge dive, and he cuts in front of Subic, asserts his authority and goes up to third. Great driving from Mike Bell, and he makes up the place ahead of Timon Subic. Now that almost came out of nowhere entirely, and so Mike Bell has gone from the defensive to the attack immediately, and Timon Subic is the one that loses out and drops to fourth.
Yeah, Timon Subic, yeah, that was a interesting moment. I believe that he has just recently pit, and that's why he was kind of off the pace a little bit. And now Ernest Bernaldo, who was fighting for that 4th place, is now still fighting for 4th place, but Bell up into 3rd and needs to clear Timon Subic here as fast as possible to try to get back up there with Bell to continue challenging Bell, because that is where his fight is. Ernest Bernaldo knows where the fight is, and as we see, is going to use a slipstream out of Speedway 2 down into the Horseshoe, and we're going to see what sort of a pass can get set up here. Anyone want to brave it and go side by side in the Horseshoe? maybe a little too early for that, and nobody takes the bait.
Team on Civic hasn't been into the pit lane as far as I can see, so I'm not sure that is correct, but we'll find out. It is coming up to that 40-minute mark in the race now, and so we will be seeing pit stops very soon anyway. This is a replay of Timon Suvic into the bus stop chicane. Is this how he lost quite a bit of time here? He's only just ahead of these guys. Well, he got slightly balked by his Porsche through the bus stop chicane, and this is how it sort of developed. And then there was a big slipstream from Mike Bella, but it was really on the brakes at turn 1 when he got overtaken here. He was pretty hesitant on the way in. I think there was a GT3 in front, which was sort of making him second guess what he was going to do in towards turn 1. And here you see it. He was earlier on the brakes because of this GT3. Mike Bell wasn't, and just goes for it anyway. Goes straight down the inside. Subic left the door open. Mike Bell thought, well, I'm going to take this chance. And he has done. Cut straight in front of Subic as well on the way towards the hairpin. And that was a very well executed move in the end. No pit stops involved, no strategy, no mistakes really from Subic either. Just good driving from Mike Bell.
Yeah, Mike Bell very heads up there. You could see the moment into turn 1 when Timon Subic threw his head in the rearview mirror and realized that Mike Bell was right there. And he actually lets off the brakes and rolls up. And kudos to that GT3, that Ferrari. I'm not for sure who that was, but kudos to them for the heads-up driving and for being a very, very smooth and calm, and definitely a bit of a Code Brown moment there through. And now we see Mike Bell. Timon Subic is again going to try to make the push. Mike Bell trying to use the GT3s for a little bit of slipstream. You can see a little hairy there, but side by side, we're going to come off the speedway. These drivers are going to put all the power down that they can out of these hypercars. And who will be brave into turn 1? Mike Bell on the outside, or Timon Subic on the outside, Mike Bell on the inside, side by side here into turn 1, and it is Mike Bell a bit braver on the brakes. Timon Subic in the Acura is going to just brave it out for just a moment and hold on, stay behind, and pick another place to try the pass.
Yep, it will be waiting for another time for him as we go through the International Horseshoe again. 40 minutes complete almost at the season opening 2.4 hours of Daytona in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship for 2024. It's been a good race so far, but we're still very early on and a long way to go here in this one. But still seeing Daniel Kirby leading the way. 7 seconds is his advantage over Mikael Ginu, with Mike Bell and Timon Subic in this battle here. Bradley Sellers back to 5th position, and having come into the pit lane, well, I think having come into the pit lane, Andrew, yes, he has. Ernest Bernaldo is now down to 9th place, and that's why things have just spread out slightly here. So that has changed things up slightly. In terms of other battles that are going on out on the circuit, Riley Wines and Magnus Dahlgren are switching positions right now, with Jerry Chen there as well. That's the battle for 10th, 11th place, but I believe Dahlgren and Wines have just come into the pit lane to ruin that one. So Jerry Chen will make up both of those places as a result and moves now to 3rd in Hypercar AM. But as I say, we're 40 minutes in, and we're very much in that stage of the race where pit stops are starting to be made, and that's meaning that the order is slightly shuffled compared to what we have come to expect in the past in the start of this race. Everything's been nicely ordered, but now the order will be all over the place as with all these pit stops that are now happening.
Yeah, remember, not only are we going to have pit stops, but driver changes can also start mixing things up as well, as we expect plenty of driver changes through. Penalty to Wyans, I'll have to double check and see exactly what that's for. We're watching here Sachin Sobers in the GT3 here of the Mercedes AMG, 3rd place, continuing to catch up to Junt there in 2nd place, and continuing to push forward here in David Junt in the Acura NSX GT3. So this battle is continuing to open up, and it is, of course, just about a second the gap. He's right on the edge of that slipstream, and Sobers here continuing to push forward in the Mercedes to do the best he can to move forward into P2, and slowly but surely will continue to reel in the I can't think of the word, to reel in the fishing wire of that fishing line he's cast to pull his way forward up into 2nd place.
Yep. And so, what, just about 40 minutes into this one now, everyone beginning to settle in. There is Robert Stacken, by the way, in the GT3 Ferrari in what I'm told is the defending champions car, but I don't know whose car you mean. Well, obviously a GT3 because it's a GT3, but who? I don't know. But anyway, he's in 8th place at the moment in the field, and about a second behind Matthew Overton in the Aston Martin, which you might be able to grab a glimpse of in some of the longer shots here for P7. It will just whiz past the camera there. There you go. It's breaking the bit of a slipstream as well, actually, is Matthew Overton here, the way down towards turn 1, but no real need. Won't be threatened for his position on the way towards the first turn on this occasion. Bit of a different race for the GT3s today, really, because especially compared to the hypercars, everyone, as Ross said, oh wow, contact in the wall. One of the hypercars in the wall. It was a Ferrari with Robert Strachan, the GT3 Ferrari, making contact through the S's.
Big moment there, and we'll get a replay here as we come through, and it's just a light tap, but it just sends him straight into the wall, and that he then comes back out and collects the GT3, and that is going to be a totaled hypercar. Thankfully, we're in a simulator. Nobody has to fit the bill for that because nobody would be happy.
And was that Timon Subic who got into the back of the Ferrari, which pulled straight off to the left-hand side there and goes back to the pit lane. I think that was Vinicius Gonçalves, who's now a DNF from this race, to join Ollie Kayanlati. And there's a spin, by the way, we caught the start of. There is the Ferrari of Gonçalves, which has returned to the garage and will take no further part in this race. Robert Strachan will continue, though, after losing a position. And he drives down the road backwards for a moment before spinning back around and beginning again. That was Suvic, who had to slow down as a result as well. Doesn't seem to be any damage on this Ferrari, somewhat remarkably, but then again, they weren't the ones that made the big contact with the wall.
Yeah, and it's kind of surprising to see that there wasn't any big damage on this GT3. The GT3, very, very fortunate to make it out mostly unscathed, but I still would imagine there's going to be a pit stop involved here. And a little bit of a just breather from Robert Strachan, because that was a very, very big incident that just occurred. But as we see many, many drivers now going into the pits, and which to my surprise, Robert Strachan, not one of them, continuing to stay out and go through, and is just going to try to keep making up time as he can.
Told in YouTube by JT Tammy that Jamie Zalecki is going to be the one who takes over that car from Robert Strachan, as at least very least teammate to him. There's Norm Graf in the Cadillac on the way out of the pit lane, 5th in Hypercar Am. It's an extended pit lane these days compared to what we used to have. The pit exit line is past the first turn now on this pit access road. I don't know if you remember, Bradley, but the pit exit here used to be a bit of a precarious operation, but now they've moved the exit line further along. It's not really anymore.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind to see it be the way it used to be. I understand why it's not, because safety and the scary sketchiness of it, but it produced some interesting moments, I will say. And of course, that pit lane limiter extremely slow here at Daytona, and it can sometimes be a pain to go all the way around turn 1, but of course then it shoots you out there into turn 2. And I'd almost say that being pulled out there at the International Horseshoe is sometimes a little bit scarier, because you're out right directly into the racing line. If you're a GT3 coming out of the pits and there's a hypercar coming through who wants that racing line, you've got to be very, very careful exiting the pits. Johnny Gutierrez here in the Ford Mustang being very careful on the braking into turn 1 and doing very, very well to go through.
Commiserations in YouTube to Vinicius Gonçalves, who's come to join us now, and appreciate that is much appreciated. He says definitely not his day today, and that is one way you could put today's race for him. Hopefully he can return and come back stronger at the next round in Qatar. There is Brian Hall in the pit lane, as is Mikel Dinu and Ernest Bernardo. So not only has he been leading the race the whole way, but he's also got the most fuel than almost anybody out of his car. Daniel Kirby, still having yet to come in the pit lane, now has a really big lead as a result. And goes around again, wow.
What is Daniel Kirby doing to conserve this much fuel? Because this is impressive. This is a long run here without a pit stop and just continuing to go. He's tire whispering, he's doing everything right there. And I know we said it earlier, we don't expect the Fraschini to do this in real life, but Imagine if it would. Imagine if it would.
That would be, I think that would be the biggest shock I've ever seen in sports car racing. I can't think of a bigger one, to be honest with you. No, I actually can't. I'm trying to think, and I can't. So I'm not giving my high hopes up, but it would be good to see. If maybe they should employ Daniel Kirby to drive, then they might be all right. Joking. Anyway, back to GT3. Robert Strachan still ahead of Sashin Sobers here, who looks to have been in the pit lane. Or at least he's had problems so far. No, he has had issues because he's back to 6th here, having not been in the pit lane yet. So Strachan now ahead and into 5th, ahead of Sashin Sobers. So they get overtaken by some hypercars, probably the best chance you could possibly hope for. Now down the route straight towards the tribal. Sobers doesn't come in. I thought he was just heading towards the double yellow line there on the left hand side, but no, he stays in 6th, and I'm not sure really what he's befallen here to end up in this battle, but he has lost quite a few places since this race has started.
Yeah, Sobers picked up a penalty. I'm working to try to confirm why and confirm exactly what happened, but Sobers did pick up a penalty. I've seen a couple penalties being handed out early on, but I don't have the exact reasons why. I need to get with the race stewards to figure out exactly what happened, but that is what happened to Sobers and why he has fallen back here into 5th place. But Sashin Sobers in the GT3, strong driver here in a very, very comfortable GT3 car. The Mercedes, I would say, is probably one that most of these drivers like, other than that Mustang that's been doing amazing, and the Ferrari. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Sashin Sobers move way back up the field yet again as this race continues. Just over an hour and a half left to go here.
Yeah, thanks very much for clearing that one up to everybody. So Daniel Kirby's in the pit lane now, and Mikel Dinu might have a chance to take the lead over if the undercut has worked. Has he been quick enough on his outlaps here? His last lap was obviously an outlap, so it's not representative at all of where he should be, but in the first and second sectors he was losing time to Daniel Kirby. In sports car racing and endurance racing, the undercut is not really a thing, because when you come into the pit lane you fill up full of fuel and you end up slower because you're heavier. However, that's not the case normally here. The reason they've got to the lead though is because there's been a driver change. John Uyen is now at the wheel of the Isotta Fraschini, and so Mikel Dinu is now leading the race in the Porsche. Daniel Kirby out of the car. Wonder whether we'll be seeing him again later, or whether he's done for the day after only 50 minutes.
I would be surprised if we don't see Daniel Kirby back in the car, because he was doing very, very well. But of course, Dinu is going to be very, very happy here in the Porsche 963 with a pass there around the kink, around the west horseshoe here, around the outside of a GT3. But yeah, Dinu, very, very fortunate to see that. Now, Bernardo, you have a challenge to go forward against Dinu. Everybody needs to hold on here and just breathe, just relax. Oh, who am I kidding? Let's push it here for the next 90 minutes and let's see who can finish where at the end.
Yes, so for whatever reason, I'm not seeing pit stops in GT3 as I should be. So apologies if I've been getting wrong and misleading people. I can see a barrage of confusion in YouTube chat, and I'm sorry about it because it's my fault. Well, anyway, I've done it now, so it's fine. But yeah, I apologise because there clearly have been some goings on in GT3 in terms of pit stops and so on that I've clearly missed, and my timing screen is not showing me for the moment. So anyway, don't know what that's all about. But anyway, we'll move on. Here is Mikel Dinu leading his first lap of the season. In fact, it's the first lap that's not been led by the Isotta, and it's the Porsche now that is at the front of the race. There is the top 10 for all to see. It's Mikel Dinu leading the race ahead of Ernest Bernaldo now, who's in second. Mike Bell is third, ahead of John Uyen, who is a whopping 24 seconds off the lead already. Brian Hall is over a minute back in fifth, ahead of Adrian Rice and Alexander Schultz. And then we've got Philippe Diacati, who is leading Hypercar and by 10 seconds ahead of Guillaume Benck, and then Elko Bussing, who we've not spoken about all day actually, in the 10th place to round out the top 10 in the field. So that's where we stand with 90 minutes remaining. Just a regular World Sports Car, Virtual World Sports Car Championship event sort of distance to come here in this race.
Yeah, this is the point where the 90 minutes ticks down and the drivers are all going to be in one of two mindsets. They're going to be, yay, 90 minutes, let's go. Or, man, 90 minutes left, really? Because it doesn't feel like this race has gone all that long. It feels like just 5 minutes ago we dropped the green flag. And, of course, remember, this is the 2.4 hours of Daytona. So the drivers, with 90 minutes to go, the regular race distance that we will be used to throughout the duration of this VWSC championship, this is the point where the drivers can say, okay, now I know what I'm doing, I know I'm through, and they need to really start to settle it in and get things going here. Tom Mountjoy chasing down Craig Pullen here for P6 as we go down into turn 1. You can see Craig Pullen just a little wide there in that Porsche, and Tom Mountjoy is very much trying to push this Hardtail Racing Porsche to go forward and make the pass up for 6th place. Doing very, very good job, honestly, of trying to put some pressure on the car ahead.
That's all I'm mentioning in user chat as well, that the pit stops graphic we just brought up is incorrect. Yes, it is. That's seems to be an rFactor 2 problem. I've noticed that a lot during my time broadcasting this game, that it never really knows who's been in the pit lane and when, for whatever reason. So ignore that. We'll try and keep you up to date as possible, but it's very hard to tell, as you might be able to imagine. We're on board with Tom Mountjoy at the moment, trying to get past Craig Pullen for 6th position. And this is an all Porsche battle here for this place, and hopefully we will see a battle between these two, and that's what we've had so far in this race. We're nearly an hour in now, and it's been a steady stream of good battles, I've got to say, throughout the most part of this race. We've not had much to, not had many moments where there's not been any battles out on the circuit.
For sure, Tom Mountjoy there catching a GT3 in the absolute worst place possible. Craig Pullen clearing just before the bus stop, and Tom Mountjoy not being able to, having to brake way down in order to avoid any sort of incident there, but doing well to do that and then go through. And yeah, it's been a very, for the most part, clean race. We haven't seen anything too crazy happen. We've seen a couple drivers with some moments. We've seen a GT3 and a hypercar come together, which is to be expected here, of course, with racing at Daytona on the road course. But for the most part, these drivers are doing very, very well to stay focused, and I hope they continue to do so, because we are in the deep part of the night here in Daytona, and this is really where the drivers have to keep it together, stay focused, and make their way through till the end. Of course, track temperature 9 degrees Celsius and the ambient is 14 degrees Celsius, so keeping your tires warm, keeping everything going, and keeping these cars flowing and consistent is the name to the game right now.
It is, with this amount of time remaining in the day. So Ripple is still ahead of Tom Mountjoy here, and the two of them have quite some gap ahead and behind them before they are in trouble for any more positions. Now, John Ian is down to 6th place now, clearly struggling a little bit out there on the circuit for whatever reason. The last lap for him was at 1 minute 50.6 after losing 20 seconds in the first sector. Now, there's clearly been a problem for the previous race leader earlier on in this race, and, well, he's now down to 6th. So Adrian Rice and Brian Hall are fighting for 4th position. This is what happened, is it, for John Ian? No, that's nothing seems to be showing up. So whatever it is, it wasn't contact with anything, because he's got all his car parts remaining, which is a good thing. But he is down to 6th, and this is worrying times for the previous race leaders.
Yeah, the previous race leaders are now just kind of looking, and I have to wonder what happened, if anything minor, to just cause this to drop off, because really I would expect him to be all the way up forward. But I mean, if you look at the timing charts there for Hypercar, that's a considerable gap that's going to have to be made up. Now, 2.8 seconds, we can start to see that 3-second gap to Hall starting to close a little bit now. We're down to about 1.5 seconds, so catching up there with the help of some GT3 traffic to Hall as we hit the bus stop. But is it going to be enough for when we hit the end of these 90 minutes to be up in the lead and contention for the win? Or has something really, really just sent things wrong? I can't tell. I genuinely don't know what has happened to really set things this different.
Told from Tom Lane that it is a drive-through for, or was a drive-through for Ian, which makes sense actually if he lost all that time in the first sector, because that's where obviously the end of the pit lane is, and that would lead him to lose some time. And now he's back on the pace again. His last lap was a 1:35.3, which was 2.2 seconds quicker than Brian Hall, and that's why he's closing in quite so quickly to the Acura up in front, really starting to apply that pressure already to come back through the field again. The pressure's on now because he is over a minute off of the race lead.
Yeah, that drive-through proving very, very catastrophic to his race, but the recovery drive is on, and this is going to be the moment where the stars really can align, and you can prove that just one small penalty doesn't have to cost your race. Of course, we've seen it happen in real life Daytona where drivers have gotten penalties or had car problems, pitted in, and of course at the end of 24 hours will still finish, top 3, top 5, wherever they may land. So this is the redemption arc, I believe, for John Uyen as we go through that. Isotta Fraschini may still find its way to the top step of the podium at the end of 90 minutes, but stick around and you will find out, just like I will, because I cannot see into the future.
Yes, unless you're watching this, of course, after the fact, in which case you could just scroll forwards and find out, but don't. Still 85 minutes remaining of great action, of course, and next bit of that is probably going to come here in the hypercar class. The GT3 AM leader is into the pit lane, Jos Lipetri, for the first time, I believe. We're not yet an hour into this one quite, so it's not unexpected that some of these GT3s have yet to make their way down pit lane, although we have seen a couple of them in so far. There is Lipetri in Ferrari in pit lane and making his way back out again, still at the wheel of that car, and he has done a good job so far to still lead. Such is the job that he's done so far, he's going to come into the pit lane and get out again, having not lost that lead.
Yeah, that's a considerable gap there to hold on to. And of course, Vasilis Katernikes is into the pits now. That 041 Porsche GT3 Katernikes. There we go. I can pronounce last names. My American is showing here, is all you need to know. But the Porsche's into the pits. That's the important part to note. The 041 going in there in the GT3 and throwing the car in, getting a good pit stop going. So GT3 is now starting their pit stop cycles, and another penalty being handed out. I did not catch who that was, though.
It was just Lipetri in the lead of GT3 AM, so his very big lead may well be shrinking very quickly soon, because he's got a penalty, and given where he is, I would argue that is probably speeding in the pit lane. So he will have to come and serve that very soon. He does a very nice cutback, all of the hypercars. Pretty irritating if you're a hypercar driver, but then again, they did outbrake themselves, so fair enough. Did see as well, and they've done it again in turn 6 there. But Lipetri's going to have to come down pit lane, and that does mean that Mike Pierce will take over the lead when he does that. However, I've not seen Mike Pierce into the pit lane yet, and so that will be a worry for him. And I think Lipetri is still going to hang on to the lead despite this penalty.
Yeah, that 25-second gap is considerable. So even though Mike Pierce hasn't been into the pits as far as I'm aware and goes through, Lipetri is still in a very, very good spot there. But speeding in the pit lane, it's something that you want to avoid, because if that happens again, that could be a huge problem. And here we go, Takanashi into the pit lane now.
Alessio Neto from the lead is in GT3 as well. Well, he's actually on his way out again now in the lime green, the fluorescent yellow, if you like. I don't know if that's kind of both, isn't it? Out of the pit lane he goes onto the racetrack again, and he's still third. Although waiting for Overton and Sobers to come in. Did hear reports that Sobers had already been in earlier, but I guess we concluded that was a penalty maybe, that he'd come in and served, so that's what's led him into this position. As Neto's going to get dived here by one of the hypercars into the West Horseshoe. Is he going to outbrake us? That's what's causing the yellow flag. It's one of the Isotta Fraschini's again off the road at the West Horseshoe. Now, who on earth that may be is a mystery. It's Benjamin Putyus-Heath who's gone skating under brakes there, and he's missed the wall. Well, just about. He's not lost any of his car, so that's a good thing. But he's put it going again. That's why the yellow flag lasted quite so long.
Yeah, getting the cars back going is a challenge, and there we go. Very, very good heads-up driving from Benjamin there to stay out of the way of the cars coming through. But now, as we go through here in Hypercar AM, he is up in P3. Let's check back in with GT3 here as Sober's second place and going through, and it's showing a pit timer for him for me. So I'm going to ignore that here because Overton just ahead. So this battle P1, P2, very, very close for these two.
And there it is. Into the pit lane for Overton and Sobers. So, there they are. Here's the battle for 5th place. David Young gets ahead of Stuart Barge here for 5th position, and that's probably to be expected compared to where they were running earlier on in the race. And a very experienced Star Factor 2 driver. Be surprised if he's not at 10 years yet driving on this simulator. He probably doesn't want to hear that, but I think it's true. So there you are. 5th place for him now, with an hour and 20 remaining. Hearing that Mike Booth, by the way, is into the car for Matt Booth, so they have actually been into the pit lane, and that is the legitimate gap in GT3 AM, by the way. So clearly that penalty has been quite costly. There's the Corvette C8, by the way, still alive and well in R-Factor 2, and even if it doesn't get much use anymore, from what I know anyway. It's leading at the moment in GT3 AM in this series.
Very, very happy to see the Corvette C8 leading in GT3 AM because it's a beautiful car. It's a nice car. We see the Hypercar there, the Acura going around the inside. But very well deserved to see the C8 in the lead, even if it's something that we may not always see in real life. But hey, I can have my dreams. Again, my Americanism is coming out. And of course, the Corvette factory is just a couple hours down the road from me. Somewhere I've visited, I've toured, and I do love, and frankly, if the bank account would support it, I would own one. But hey, bank account can't make that work all the time here. Mike Buse under pressure there. Who is that going around the side of him there?
It's David Yun. He's going through in a different class. I'm not sure whether that's to put a lap on him. It is in GT3. So they're already a lap ahead. Yun is in 3rd place in GT3 and is a lap ahead now of Mike Buse and all of the GT3 AMs for that matter. Only 3 of them in this race, of course, but we'll get a pretty close race between them. JT Tommy is no longer in our YouTube chat because he's now out on the circuit. Now 7th place for him as he tries to chase down Gilles Lalonde for 6th in GT3. He tries to keep Dave Coors away in the Acura ahead, or behind, excuse me. It says he's behind according to that graphic, although I can't see an Acura 1 second behind anymore. Dave Coors pulls to the... Is that him there? That gap doesn't seem to be making any sense compared to what we're seeing on the track, I've got to say. 1.2, oh no, that does make sense now. It didn't make sense a couple of moments ago, but Pami is now in 7th, and Coors down to 8th. They are a second and a half apart, and you'd expect Tami to probably be able to get away here. I've got to say, gaps in GT3 pretty small, from 5th place down to about 8th. The gaps are not very big at all, although Tami does have 20 seconds up to Lalonde, I suppose, but definitely 3rd to 6th is a pretty close run thing at the moment.
Yeah, and that's, again, I said earlier that GT3 tends to be my class of choice whenever I'm driving, few and far between times that I do such a thing. But typically that's why, because you tend to see tighter competitive racing with GT3. And even though those hypercars can get in the mix and cause a bit of, chaos and headaches, but GT3s always seem to be fairly evenly matched and seem to always be a very, very close battle back and forth. New best lap time from Neto there. 143.698. That is a GT3 leader who is going through. And here we go of Tammy letting a hypercar around the inside. That is the 064 of Bell in the hypercar. That's the 3rd place hypercar who is coming through, who is trying to chase down Bernaldo as we go. And very, very good heads-up driving yet again. And these drivers are really, really doing their best to just survive through and try to keep things going. A minute 7, or hour 17 minutes left to go here in this VWSC race here at the Daytona Road Course, and the driver's doing very, very well to keep things going. We've only had a couple of DNFs, and for the most part, everyone putting pressure all the way around on the drivers they need to try to get their best results here early on.
They are, and it's still a mystery who's going to win this race, isn't it, really, at the front of the field. I don't know which direction this race is going to head in now. Mikel Dinu is leading 5.5 seconds ahead of Ernest Bernardo. Now, if you'd have said this 10 minutes into the race that Bernardo is going to be second, only 6 seconds off the win, then I think you would have been laughed out the room. But now, all of a sudden, it looks, you know, better and better for the driver of the 006 Porsche. And we've got a real race on here. Dinu is still leading the way, of course, and has driven well so far. He's on the hard tyres again, but he's getting chased down now from Bernardo. We've got John Ian coming through the field, now back to 5th position, but a lot of work to do there after their penalty. Who knows what twists and turns we're going to have in the remainder of this race now. It's still an hour, well, just over half remaining.
Yeah, and here's the thing is Bernardo is 6 seconds back as you work your way through traffic here, but it's 6 seconds with over an hour and 15 minutes left to go, and that's not a crazy gap that Dinu has here, and any small thing could close that gap up, and then we go into a real big battle on our hands. And of course, we could see this push and go all the way down to a last lap pass. We could see, you know, bus stop chaos. There's plenty of things that are in the realm of possibilities, and I'm going to tell you the over-under on seeing something like that happen is pretty high. So everyone just buckle down. You've got an hour and 15 minutes left of racing to come at you here. And in the end, I don't want to make any predictions because I don't want to be accused of a commentator's curse.
Well, we'll see if see what's going to happen here. Plenty of time remaining. Ernest Bernardo is behind one of the hypercars here, by the way, in the form of the 89. Not sure which one that is, I've got to be honest with you, but anyway, dispatch that one pretty quickly. You'd hope anyway. Down the straight here. Now Will finally just edged past on the high side through the tribal here. Into turn 1. Yep, he will get that move. And he'll be up to second. He really is chasing Mikel Dinu out front in this race. And what a race we may well see between those two at the front of the field as well. This could be quite something between them, but as I mentioned, still a very long way to go, and still 2 more pit stops for these guys to make in the hypercar class as well. We're about 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away maybe from seeing the real limit of this second stint in the race. And from what we've seen so far, a big key to the race that we didn't mention earlier on is making sure you don't speed in the pit lane. It's a big stop, of course, as you're entering pit lane here at Daytona. You're coming right off of NASCAR turn 4, and it's not like you're doing it on the oval and you really are struggling to even have the room to brake in time. You've got the room to do it, but it's a big stop. You've got to really knock a lot of speed off from approaching 200 down to 37, and that is a real problem, clearly, because we've seen quite a few drivers have to make trips down pit lane for speeding already.
Yeah, I thought the issue with pit lane would be just hitting your box and not hitting another car, but apparently the issue seems to be just getting down to that slow speed limit, which is kind of impressive that at a track like this, the speed limit is so slow. But again, it's all in the name of safety and going through, and it's the fun of the sim world. We imitate life, but then kind of have crazy things go through, and then drivers, you know, end up with speeding penalties, and the issue can become that could throw your entire race on its head. So, you know, think about this. If Dinu were to speed in the pit lane right now, where would Dinu come back out? And would drop all the way down the order, and it would be a total game changer. So the drivers really need to be on their P's and Q's for the final 2 pit stops that they have coming up, along with picking their strategy, you know, deciding, are they going to conserve, are they going to push, what is their game plan top to bottom. Of course, they could pick, are they changing 1, 2, 3, 4 tires? So, you know, do you try to conserve some tires and maybe just do a 2-tire stop? Do you just do a 1-tire stop? There's so many possibilities here for the drivers to end up on their pit strategy, and it really does add a layer to this race that just the length alone didn't.
And on that sort of changing tyres subject, talk a little bit about some of the others who have tried something in this race. As far as I'm aware, not many have tried to split tyre compounds, which you can do in these cars. You are allowed to have different compounds on different tyres at the same time. However, it doesn't seem to have turned out so well for those who have tried it so far. And I mean, that does make sense, doesn't it, really, when you think about it logically? All the different tyre compounds, of course, have different interactions with the road and different behaviours with the car. And it's no real surprise that mixing and matching isn't a good idea, especially in downforce cars like these hypercars, where you really need those tyres to be glued to the road.
Yeah, keeping the tires glued to the road is truly the name of the game. And we've seen plenty of cars break traction and toss the traction out from the rear wheels and just go, well, I don't need this traction. And then, you know, you end up facing the back to the front and looking at the cars go by and you go, I shouldn't be parked this way. So watching that tire traction is a big gain here. And John Ewan is doing a very, very good job to hold on here in 5th place, 3.6 seconds.
Into bus stop chicane we go. John Ewan just 3 seconds behind at this battle for 4th place. Adrian Rice currently holding on to that position at the moment. In terms of close battles, we haven't got any that are literally nose to tail, but we do have a few gaps closing. Stuart Barge is being caught by Sashin Sobers at the moment, although he's just emerged from the pit lane as Sobers. That's only 2 seconds between the 999 and the 15. So that is for 4th coming up soon. And Mike Beerus is being caught by Josh Lipetri for the lead in GT3 AM. The gap's still 8 seconds, but you can see that Lipetri is the fastest guy in that class here today, Bradley, because despite that drive-through penalty, he's come out behind in 2nd place and he's doing a lot of catching now, having re-emerged.
Yeah, proving that the penalty does not have to shape your race and going to show that remembering this is a long race and utilizing your pace, your recovery, everything you can do can go to show things at the end. I do see it looks like Bernaldo into the pit lane there, the 3rd place driver in Hypercar, and doing a very, very long stop. Actually not too long of a stop here, and just getting things going. I'd imagine that's 4 tires, full sets of fuel. So Hypercars starting to come in. Sasha Sobers there on the screen, a little bit of a slide through the bus stop, but doing well to hold traction there in that GT3. And I have to ask, what is your preferred car? If you were to race in this series and, you know, try to push through, what is your preferred car? What do you think you'd want to run?
Well, I can only really base it on what they look like, to be honest, because I've not actually driven any of the R-Factor 2 GT3s, I don't think, in my time. But if I were to choose one of the GT3s on looks purely, I'd probably go for maybe the new Ferrari, the 296, I think looks very nice. One currently being driven to the sort of best position by Stuart Barge at the moment, in 4th position, being caught by Sashin Sobers. That looks very good. And also the Porsche as well, the 911 GT3, 992, whatever they've decided to call it this time around. That's currently running best by Vasilis Katarinakis, down in 8th position at the moment in GT3. Those two kind of look the best to me. Although I did hear earlier on that, well, someone was talking about Yuki Takanashi earlier on in that Ferrari, in the 999, of course. Stuart Barge there. Now, Jamie Zalecki also driving another one of the Ferraris, Josh Lipetri as well. But while Yuki Takanashi was at the wheel of his Ferrari, someone in YouTube was mentioning what a handful that car is, because if you remember, he was having some problems, especially through the bus stop chicane during his stint. So I get the feeling that, you know, these cars don't always drive how they look sometimes, and maybe I wouldn't want to drive it after actually experiencing it, because from what people were saying, it didn't seem like the most controllable of the GT3s that are able to be selected.
Yeah, the GT3s seem to have a very, very different personality depending on which one you pick. Some of them do really well with setups such as like the Acura NSX, and some of them seem to just be very, very understeer. Some of them seem to oversteer. And so for me, I like a car that is very, very front heavy. So the Lexus RC would actually be the car that I would pick, I believe, in the GT3s, which I don't think any of our drivers are running a Lexus, which is kind of surprising. But I say that, and then, you know, I'd probably try to run this race and I go, never mind, I don't want this car. Give me something different. So I think one of the things too to consider whenever you're looking at this series and you're kind of looking at, you know, this 13 race calendar and you're running how things are going, it's truly what car is a driver running and how does that contend with their driving style? And, you know, how does the car handle the driver? How does the driver handle the car? Is their car naturally understeering, and is it something they're comfortable with? Is it something oversteering, and is it something, you know, that maybe they don't like? It really depends, and I think we're starting to see that too in Hypercar, because the Hypercars is the same way, as Uyen is closing the gap on Rice. That gap's 1.7 seconds now. We're going to continue to watch this number 90 Asada push forward and really put pressure.
Someone was off there at turn 6 on the way out towards the banking there. But he not affected, and neither was Adrian Rice, interestingly. Although it was the same kind of region where Rice could have made contact with that car that went around. And we'll find out pretty shortly. Well, this is separate, but it's a trip into the grass for one of the Hypercars as well. That's one of the Alpines, isn't it? Got the sort of A headlights at the back, if you see what I mean. This is one of the Cadillacs going for a spin at the West Horseshoe. That's the leader in Hypercar AM, or was the leader. Guillaume Benck, he's now in the pit lane, of course, but he went for a spin at the West Horseshoe, but oh no, it's just internet problems. Or one of the, I think Uyen, isn't it, who's making his way over the line at the moment, but don't know who he passed out onto the banking there, but anyway, doesn't matter too much. We'll try and find it if we can, but it's not overly important, I don't think, defining for this race. Let's see, Guillaume Benck still in the pit lane here, which is quite a long stop there in Hypercar AM. Now drops to 4th place and still up in the air as to who's going to win that race in the second of our 4 classes here today as well.
Yeah, it's all still up in the air. And again, one small moment here is we've got an hour and 5 minutes to go as we see Uyen here putting pressure forward and trying to get a pass done and trying to continue to move his way forward there. Now in 3rd place. But yeah, it's very up in the air. And it's a thing to remember that this is the race of endurance. This is a race of keeping your head on straight. And it's a race where one small mistake can cost your team a lot of position and a lot of time here. And again, we continue to watch, and there is the light flash from John Uyen trying to get past the car ahead and saying, hey, let me through. And there it is, there's the braking, and John Uyen is going to send it up the inside there with the Fraschini into the inside.
And Sachin Sobers has a great has a second penalty of this race. There he is. Is it a stop go this time? It must be. He's not up on the jacks. He's stopped in the box, or a box, and it's serving a penalty of some description here. So I thought they were all drive-throughs, but clearly they're not. Ah, no, he just retires. So Sachin Sobers receives his second penalty of the day and decides, I've had enough, and that's the end of his day.
Yeah, I have to wonder what that one was for, because it's very...
Right limits?
Yeah, that's a weird one. I thought he was doing fuel only for a second. Then I was like, oh, penalty, and then just into the garage. So an hour and 3 minutes left, and that is going to be that Mercedes race over.
It's the end of Sachin Sobers for today, unfortunately. So it's a real shame to see, but he is out of the 2.4 hours of Daytona to become our 3rd retirement of the day, to join Vinicius Gonçalves and Oli Kayanlati in the Ford Mustang to be out of the race so far. So 33 remain out on the circuit. I think it's a healthy amount of cars to have, I've got to say. I know that next weekend we're going to have about 60 at the start of the race at Daytona. I don't know whether that's maybe too many, because well, there's a lot of them out there on the there's going to be a lot of them out there on the circuit, I think it's fair to say. However, it will be all good fun, of course, but I think for the sort of longevity of a race like this one, it's probably better to have 33. It seems like a nicer number and a good number of GT3s to contend with for these hypercars as well. It's not sort of overpowering, whereas in the real race next weekend, the leading drivers are going to have 45-ish, maybe 50 slower class cars, LMP2 and GT3, to contend with, and that is very, very busy, especially early on.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see how it plays out in the real life race next week, because we see how it's working here in the virtual world. And of course, every other Daytona race that you may watch, it's going to be kind of a similar story. But the real world is really going to be interesting to see. And of course, that's just in 7 days' time. They'll be a couple hours into their race. We are an hour and 2 minutes left to go here in our race. And we see things very much just getting relaxed, and everybody is very well settled into their rhythm, settled into their groove, and is just looking here. Tom Lane and the 006 Porsche, man, 007 would have been so cool, but 006 Porsche here going down into turn 6, the left-hander out onto the speedway, and is trying to just continue to stay relaxed. Has a good gap that he needs to make up, but is doing well and just holding on to things.
Mike Beers has been displaced in the lead of this GT3 AM field, by the way. Josh Lepetri now at the front of that one, so a new leader there again after the penalty has been served, and he's back out there again now, of course, and has been for some time. However, Lepetri is now in the lead, 6 seconds as well, and he seems to be by far and away the quickest driver in this GT3 AM field.
Yeah, looking at some quick replays of some off tracks that have happened here. That is the number 014. That's Benjamin Porteous Heath, who spins there in good avoiding action there from the Acura in the GT3 class to avoid that moment. And then here we go. This is going to be another off track here, and this is turn 1. That's the International Horseshoe. It's not how you want to do that. That's Maximilian Petrovsky, and that is not how you want to take the International Horseshoe. Joining back on track, taking a barrier with, and then here we go. This is on the speedway. This is going to be another Hypercar Wyans here going through and just diving into the pits, and a very interesting pit dive there. A little bit early to go in, and then again another one here. This is Petrovsky yet again coming out of turn 1. Oh, snaps the car and eats a barrier for breakfast. Well, this is probably fourth meal, late night dinner. And now this is Torinakis coming through, and oh
no,
that's a hard hit in the bus stop.
That's the biggest hit we've seen all day, probably. Vasilis Katrinakis. Oh, and he's reversed into the wall. Oh no, that's not. Is that his car? Well, he's carrying some of it with him. Is that his wing? Well, he's still got wing end plates.
Yeah.
But no wing. So that makes sense. Look at the end plates floating in the air. Anyway, he's got no rear wing. And so Petronakis makes his way back into the pit lane, and we'll need a new one before re-emerging. What is nice to see, though, is that some of these drivers who clearly have had difficult afternoons, and they've had lots of issues throughout the day. For a lot of them, though, we have seen them get damaged, get it repaired, and then get back on the circuit, which is what we like to see, really. We don't like to see people going into the pit lane and DNFing. We like to see people continuing on, and that's been the case for the most part. Katrinakis, another example of that.
Yeah, because one of the things with it, again, it's a long race, and there's no sense, if you have an incident early on, there's no sense in throwing away a whole race. You've got plenty of time to make it back. Now, and for some of these teams, it is a balance of, what can you recover from and what can you not, and what do you want to recover from? So for some of the teams, it is a case of, hey, I spun, I hit the wall, but my car's not too bad. I can recover from that and make my way forward and get a bit of a repair. For some of the teams, I've hit the wall 7 times, and at this point my car is going to take 3 hours to repair. It's a 2-hour race. You can do the math. It's not worth it. But the driver's doing very, very well to keep the cars on the track, keep things going, and overall we're seeing a healthy amount of different things. And I just want to point out, the YouTube chat is pointing out that those end plates that you saw there, that is just Porsche engineering. That's just how good Porsche is to engineer cars. So the YouTube chat seeming to have connections with Porsche and seeming to know some secrets they have. And I'm curious to see if those turn up next week at the real life.
Whoa.
Big snap there from Busnick. What was that in the Acura on the bus stop? Woohoo! Oh, man.
Tom Lane is probably the most relieved person to see Busnick not end up having a crash there, because he would have been involved in it as well, probably. But that big slide has not helped his run onto the NASCAR oval, and so Tom Lane is going to go through here surely. He's pulled level in the Porsche, he's actually ahead, and he's clear by the braking zone, and Busnick doesn't brake late to try and inconvenience him any further, and so Tom Lane goes through to 6th position. And in the end, that wasn't too difficult, mainly because of that big slide, which sort of invited Tom Lane to go for that.
Yeah, that big slide, and again, great recovery here. All of these drivers are showing just great car handling all the way through, being able to catch some of these slides, some of these spins, some of the moments we've seen, and not had huge wrecks, but they've been doing well to really catch it and hold on. And here we go. This is Tom Lane catching that is the Cadillac in the Hypercar AM class, I believe, that he is catching up to of Norm Graff, if I don't have my cars mistaken.
Let's see, less than an hour remaining in the race here at Daytona. Got a couple of battles that are sort of developing here at the moment, and Alexander Schultz is catching Daniel Hurlock at the moment for 4th position, and Tom Lane getting away from Elko Bossink now, as you can see. We've also got a little bit further back, Michael Locke just got past Benjamin Portis-Heath, but they're not in the same class down in Hypercar. This is the next closest battle, though. It's between Gilles Lalonde and JT Tami, a 3rd place in GT3. And by the way, in GT3 at the moment, what a great mix of manufacturers we've got at the front of the field. Mercedes lead the way ahead of Acura, Ford and Aston Martin. This is Ford versus Aston Martin, a battle of the bigger GT3s, I think it's fair to say, making its way out onto the NASCAR oval once again. Gilles Lalonde is going to have a pretty big job to defend from Tami, though, who's really caught him over the last few laps.
Yeah, but the big thing to remember with this Mustang is it's a very well-rounded car. It does very, very good in straight line and acceleration. And when you look at this Aston Martin, the Aston Martin, it's very, very fast in a straight line, but it tends to not have as great acceleration or braking. And they both tend to do good in the corners. Now, how that translates out, slipstream's going to help a bit here for Tami, but Lalonde is going to possibly have the upper edge with this car up through the run, but the slipstream is going to help for the Dark Thunder Racing JT Tami trying to push through. Slipstream going through, there's a hypercar on the outside, and now JT Tami is going to slide right to the outside lane and say, hey, I'm going to follow this hypercar around, and this is the battle for 3rd place in GT3, and around the outside, they're going to be side by side. Who backs out of it here? Inside is Lalonde, outside is Tami, and as we go down into turn 1, it looks like it is JT Tami who holds on, and Lalonde slides back in the Mustang into 4th place, but not that far back. And that is a Porsche in the wall I see in the background.
Not Katranakis again, is it? Or is it one of the hypercars? Because I didn't say. Oh, it is Katranakis again. And it's not quite. Oh no, this is he was very close to a big hit on the inside wall. Instead takes a big hit to the outside instead. It's not been his day, unfortunately. And unlike what he managed earlier on, I can't remember who hit him in the rear on the way towards turn 1 earlier on in the race. I don't know if you can, but he put off a remarkable save then. He couldn't quite do the same here.
Yeah, he tried though. He gave it his best shot to save that car, but just a bit too hot on the brakes going in, and it looks like a penalty for Graff popping out. That's that number 5 Hypercar AM that pops up a penalty. We'll have to check and see exactly what that is that goes through here. Katranakis is just not having the best race possible. And here we go. Here's a little bit of a moment in the front. That is Daniel Hurlock and Brian. Oh, get the car slowed down here, please. Get that Lamborghini to slow down a bit.
I don't really understand what that was all about, but Brian Hall still ahead of Daniel Hurlock here. He's weaving around as well to go past the Corvette of Mike Pierce in 2nd place in GT3. And here goes Daniel Hurlock straight to the inside. No waiting around here for the driver of the Lamborghini. He's through into 2nd position ahead of Brian Hall now in the Acura. And so that was a pretty easy move in the end, and Alexander Schultz is not too far behind either. John Owen leading the race, by the way, by over 30 seconds, but he's still yet to make his 2nd stop of the day.
Yeah, we've still got plenty of stops to go, plenty of things to mix up. 53 minutes left to go in this race, but Daniel Hurlock is driving it like it's the last lap every single time, pushing that Lamborghini to the limits and doing the absolute most to get the most out of this hypercar that he can to continue to push that gap forward and move forward. Here we go. We're checking back in with Katranakis again, who is getting lapped by some hypercars and sitting back. Dave Coors is doing the best he can here to move around. And here we go. Let's check in with Joe Wilkes and Jamie Zalecki, who are battling it out here with a Mustang versus Ferrari. And we love to see Ford versus Ferrari stories here. And it is no different now. Hypercar around, and Jamie Zalecki is going to try to follow that hypercar straight through as much as possible.
Oh, be careful. This is, oh my word. Jamie Zalecki trying to go through on Joe Wilkes while one of the hypercars is trying to overtake everyone at the same time. And it's a big dive into the West Horseshoe. Going to be a cutback here from the Ford of Wilkes, and the Alpine goes off entirely. That is one of those Daytona moments where there is just not much space on the road, and Jamie Zalecki finally does head down the inside to give us 5 different manufacturers inside the top 5 of GT3.
5 manufacturers in the top 5 of GT3, and now another hypercar making their way through and going around. We see Katernakis here is continuing to go through, but I think that battle between Zalecki and Wilkes is going to continue to heat up as we go through, because there's not much of a gap between them ahead. Watch them there on that left-hand side of your screen as we see into the bus stop. There's a hypercar down the inside of Wilkes there, and that's a brave move through the bus stop. No waiting around on the lapped cars and the slower class cars to go through. They want through now, and we can check in again. You see your class leaders up at the top center of the screen, and with 51 minutes to go, I am going to anticipate that's going to flip around several more times before the end of this race.
It certainly is. We are having a couple of sound issues at the moment, so we're just going to step away for a short break, and we'll be back in a couple of moments once they're sorted.
Ugh.
Welcome back to Daytona, where we've got still 45 minutes remaining here of the season opening World Sports Car Championship race for 2024. Apologies for those technical issues. We're back again now and should be until the end of the race. Daniel Hurlock is now the leader of this one, ahead of Tom Lane by only 3 seconds, with Jascha Schmidt another 10 seconds back, and Daniel Kirby in the pit lane as of right now, losing time to just around a minute off the race lead during their penultimate stop of the day. But it's myself, Ian O'Leary, Bradley Dalton alongside me for this one. It looks to me, Bradley, as if John Ian has done his racing for the day now, and for the remaining 45 minutes, Daniel Kirby has been tasked with catching the rest, and possibly tasked with making this just a two-stop race in Hypercar, because with 44 minutes to go, he might be able to make it to the end.
Yeah, Daniel Kirby back on track and getting that bit of a break in the mid. Started out extremely strong and, of course, was our race leader for the longest time. And then a bit of a drive-through penalty there, served by his teammate, dropping back. But Daniel Kirby back in that car. We know Daniel Kirby has pace. 72 seconds, though, off the lead of Daniel Hurlock. And we will continue to watch and see how that ends up. Daniel Kirby, very, very fast car, though. And, of course, that Freshini car in a very, very good spot. But those cold tires on, a little bit of a slide there out of 6. Daniel Kirby holding on to it. And now will contend with the, that is Buse there in the Corvette. And will shoot his way forward. And I will say in 45 minutes, Daniel Kirby will be a name that we will be saying a few more times here.
I think so. Especially based on what we saw from him in the opening stint of the race. Took pole, of course, for this event. Got us to a very good start as well. Let's see for the remainder, though, what's going to happen. Let's see what battles we have up and down the field as well. We've got some close runs in GT3. The gap from David Yunt in 4th in GT3 back to Kyle Vesser down in, where would that be, 7th, is very, very small. There is Vesser in the Ford Mustang. It's grey and orange livery. He's chasing down Joe Wilkes in another one of the Ford Mustangs. Then there's Jamie Zalecki in the Ferrari, and then there's David Yunt in the next position. But it's these two Fords which are the closest at the moment, and it's good to see that GT3 has provided such action for us so far, as these guys, I believe, are already in the final stint of their race. If not, then they can pit from here and get to the end. We're very close to their final stops if they haven't made them already.
Yeah, the GT3s have provided some very, very interesting moments, very, very interesting racing all the way through, and it almost looked like for a second there that Kyle Vesser was going to dive into the pits there in that Sim Racing Alliance Mustang, but does not, and goes through. And yeah, I do agree with you here. I think we are seeing this race to the end, but are we going to see any tire conservation, a little bit of pushing later on? Is anybody just going to try to send it through? What are the plans in the racers' heads? I would love to know if somebody can just get in the racers' brains and just tell me what they're thinking, other than just gotta go fast. I would appreciate it, because I really want to know if strategy is going to make any sort of, moments happen here.
We'll see what happens for the remainder. We've got Hurlock under a lot of pressure for the race lead at the moment as well, by the way, from Tom Lane, who's in second. There's a lot going on out there, and these two battles are actually going to converge now. So that one we're watching in GT3 is going to be overtaken by this one for the overall race lead. It's Daniel Hurlock in the Lamborghini, just ahead of Tom Lane in this Porsche, who goes for a big slide and a loose time as his run is spoilt onto the banking again.
Tom Lane with a good save there out of 6, even though he's going to lose a bit of time there to Daniel Hurlock, and not near as much as I thought he was going to lose, though. Look at this. He's still closing the gap and keeping the gap there around 4.5 tenths. But, man, that was a moment there out of 6. And as we see the sunrise is starting to come up here with just a little bit of time left to go. And Tom Lane is putting the pressure on Daniel Hurlock for this race win. But do these guys still need to pit again? I feel like these top 2 do still need to pit again, though.
That's the sort of debate that's going on. We've heard from Mr. Reese in YouTube chat that at least 2 hypercar teams are trying to not pit again. Are these 2 one of the 2? I reckon I could give a good guess that Daniel Kirby is one of them, but well, what about the other one? I'm not entirely sure who the other one might be, actually. As the sun begins to rise at Daytona, 40 minutes remaining here at the season opening event of our season in 2024, and Tom Lane is looking for the lead into the International Horseshoe. He's not going to get it there. Daniel Hurlock is going to stay ahead. They'll have to negotiate another one of the Ferraris. This will be Jamie Zalecki in the number 488, despite the fact he's not driving a Ferrari 488 anymore. It's a 296, of course. There goes Hurlock down the inside. Late on the brakes. Is it too late? No. Gets it pulled up in time. Tom Lane followed through. And the 2 of them are going to be nose to tail out onto the banking once again.
Yeah, nose to tail onto the banking is where Tom Lane is going to start to find his time. If he holds it into turn 6 this time, which he does, he's much, much closer coming onto the banking here. And it's just a matter of slipstream and hold on here. But do you want to pass into the bus stop? Or do you want to pass into turn 1? This is going to be the question, and that is the question. Elementary, my dear Watson, he says as he goes through, look at this, splitting the middle, GT3 on the outside and on the inside there, a little bit of
no!
The GT3 spins Tom Lane!
Tom Lane goes around, and there was already someone spun around there, and he's going to do well to get round here. Oh, he's stuck now. He's stuck in the tyre wall. Is this going to be the end of the day for the Porsche? He's going to get back out again, having gone around. The Corvette of Matt Burris is going to be out onto the circuit again now as well, having had his problems. But Tom Lane has made a mistake in towards the bus stop chicane and has been spun around. Now back down to 3rd position. What a big moment for this race.
Tom Lane, quick replay here, and you see Tom Lane, very brave, splitting the middle there, but a little bit of a bump. He tries to go in early and then through, and then there was another hypercar in the grass that I didn't even notice before, but trying to split the gaps with the 2 GT3s and go 3 wide into the bus stop, it's never going to work. But you can see there, that is the C8 there of use, and just did not have any room there. You can't, he had to turn into the corner. You can't go 3 wide into the bus stop. So a little bit brave there from Tom Lane, but I don't think that was the right decision. And here's the replay of who it was. It was Brian Hall.
Yeah.
Overshoots the bus stop there onto the grass and then bounces off, and then behind him just absolute chaos. So I don't know if maybe that got his vision in the front and it caused Tom Lane to just lose sight of the corner, or what exactly might have happened there, because that was all around a wacky incident.
Well, that was a little bit weird. But Brian Hall, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it was what you said earlier, really, about just running out of space, really, for everyone there. And Hall now has let through Boucher de Bruyn in the Acura there, so change of positions. But has Hall been in to repair the front end? I don't think he has. I think he's still missing some of that, although it's hard to tell. Quite an intricate car anyway. So even if you remove a part, it's not entirely clear sometimes. And, well, I can't tell. Let's see if he comes into the pit lane this time. No, so let's see. Let's go back to the battle for 6th place. Joe Wilkes has been overtaken here by Kyle Vesser. And it looks like the 818 is getting away here in the battle of the Ford Mustangs for 6th place.
Yeah, the battle of the Ford Mustangs continuing to go through as we see. That is going to be, who was that just came out of the pits? That was one of the hypercars. But we continue to watch the Mustangs battling here, and Kyle Vessa doing well to keep pace and keep Joe Wilkes just 3/4 of a second to a second behind. That gap has fluctuated up and down a little bit, but the Mustangs here in the battle for 6th and 7th holding on very, very steady, and again giving us great action and showing off some of the great qualities of this Ford Mustang.
Yep. So let's see who will come out on top in that one. We've got still a Ford in 3rd place as well, by the way. We're shooting along now 7 seconds ahead of David Yunt in the field. And interestingly, Peter Stefani is working his way past the GT3 field in Hypercar AM, so clearly there's been some problems with that Porsche over the course of the day. We've got a DNF, by the way, for Austin Birchfield in the Ferrari Hypercar. There's a lot of cars heading into the bus stop here, Stefani being one of them, and someone is through the grass. It's not Brian Hall again, is it? It was George Angelidis this time, by the looks of things, the leader in Hypercar AM. Let's have a look at this, because there are 8 cars, 7 or 8, and he gets hit there by Kyle Vesser in the Mustang, and Angelidis, the leader in Hypercar AM, ends up in the wall.
Man, that was a unfortunate moment. I don't know exactly what caused that, because usually you'd see the inverse. You'd see the hypercar going to the GT3 car. So I don't know what it was that caused that, but George Angelidis there, the 048, doing well to still stay out. And there's a penalty handed down for Hall. And I'm curious to see what that will change and what will happen now with Hall having a penalty. But these hypercars are getting very, very, very antsy with 35 minutes left to go in this race.
Yeah, penalty for Brian Hall's going to set him back as Tom Lane comes into the pit lane for the final time today. So final pit stops in the hypercar class are starting to come to fruition. Let's see where Lane is going to come out. This is a battle a little bit further back as Eric Mounier is looking for a position ahead of Norm Graf. This is for 4th place in the hypercar AM field. They're both a lap behind George Angelidis, interestingly, in what's turning into a bit of a dominating drive from him. But the battle for 4th is on. Mounier closes in the slipstream here, looking for a move, looks to the inside here, maybe, through the tri-oval. Through Mounier goes to the inside. Is there going to be a deeper move on the brakes? Yes, there is. And through goes Mounier into 4th. Nice move. And there was not much arguing there. I don't think Norm Graf has quite got the speed to keep up with that Porsche as of right now.
Yeah, I think... Oh, there's a moment.
Who was that?
I don't know who that was, but that's ends up driving from Eric Mounier to save that, and that opens the door. Norm Graf back in the mix. I'm curious to know who that was, though, that was sitting wrong way around in the horseshoe.
Tom Lane, was it, on his outlap? Oh, dear, and it's a good job from everybody to avoid him. That could have been a lot worse for everybody, because the spin there put him right in the middle of the road. Thankfully, he was avoided by everybody, but it could have been a whole lot worse for everyone.
And then
Mike Buse in the bus stop chicane going for a spin in the Corvette C8. And, well, it's pretty innocent spin in the end. Didn't hit anything, which is the advantage.
yeah, not a bad spin
Stephen
at all
Buse.
there.
How many Buises are there? Just me. Sorry.
Good question. Is that a... I have to ask, is that a family running together?
Seems to be a... there's 3 of them now. We've had Mike and Stephen. I don't think I've seen Stephen before. Anyway, tell us... tell us, someone, who knows if they're absolutely 100% sure. Side by side again, thought Norm Graf was done with this battle, but he's not. He's looking for the outside at turn 1, although I don't think was quite brave enough to go around the outside there, and who can blame him? Could have gone wrong very easily, as Tom Lane is all out of sorts on his second lap out the pit lane now.
Yeah, I think Tom Lane has really found himself shaken up after that spin straight out of his pit stop. And of course, that can cause, a little bit of the nerves. There's 30 minutes left to go. Tom Lane knows there's a lot on the line and needs to keep pushing. And of course, that can cause a little bit of nerves, a little bit of shakeup, and really mess up your outlap. And if you mess up the outlap, it can really set the momentum for the next couple of laps. Norm Graf had a little bit of a moment of a slide there coming out of the International Horseshoe and did a very good job to hold on to it, though. Keeps pushing, trying to throw that Cadillac forward against Eric Mounier, and trying to continue to push forward and put pressure just over a second coming out of turn 6, turn 7 onto Speedway turn 2. And we will see how this battle shapes up through the end of this race. This is, of course, the battle for 4th place in the Hypercar AM class.
By the way, they're 3 brothers, the 3 Buises, so thank you very much for those who have let us know, and we promise to attempt to remember, because I'm so bad at remembering stuff, so I apologise when I inevitably ask again at some point in the remainder of the season. Jules Lalonde is catching to David Yunt at the moment. This is a nice battle for 3rd place in GT3 at the moment with half an hour to go, and Lalonde has done a good job to close in here in the recent past. Although, I think it's actually the other way around, actually, isn't it? It's Yunt who's gotten past Lalonde. He was 2.4 seconds quicker than Lalonde on that last lap, so it's actually the other way around, excuse me. Accurate getting past the Ford, and now onto the podium provisionally in the field, which is a good result. And what an opening race result that would be to get yourself onto the podium here for the first round.
Yeah, I talked about it at the very start of the broadcast. This is setting your momentum and setting the tone for your season. And for these drivers, it's very important that they set things off on a high note if they can. Of course, a few DNFs through here of course, Sobers, Gonsalves, and Carl Henry in the Mustang, the Ferrari, and the Mercedes. So they will be playing a bit of catch up through the rest of the season. But for those drivers, it's Neto, it's Angelidis, it's Herlock, and it's Lippertree in the top spots of their respective class. They are setting themselves up for a very good run, and it is the 30-minute remaining horn that has just sounded. The banner on the top, the flag, and Joe Wilkes there. I believe that is Joe Wilkes in the 040 overshooting the pit box. That was almost very bad, because remember, there's collision in the pit lane in R Factor 2.
It's Lalonde who it was going down, but they do look the same, so I forgive you for that. they look identical cars, so anyway. It was, Lalonde there just missing his box and having to reverse in. That's a real disappointment for them. Now then, George Angelidis is in. He's making his way back out the pit lane now. I think he will come out again in first, ahead of Benjamin Porteous-Heath. Mike Bell was messaging us earlier on about it in the YouTube chat, asking us whether we can give a shout out to Benjamin Porteous-Heath for his off-season improvement, and he certainly is running well here at Daytona. 7.5 seconds now off of the lead as Angelidis makes his way back out there again in the Azotta Fraschini, and that is great to see. Second place for Porteous-Heath, a great run in this opening round.
Yeah, a very, very good run, especially with a significant off-season improvement. Starting and running second place here in the Hypercar AM, that is a good result that you can be proud of, and it sets a good momentum for the season here. 28 minutes left to go, and we see here that drivers are just continuing to push their way forward, continuing to try to drive consistent. And as we ride here with the Hypercar AM race leader of George in the 048 is just continuing to run forward and try to keep that gap on Benjamin. Currently the gap 10.2 seconds, and with 28 minutes to go, he just wants to open that up, give himself a bit of a safety net, and just run to the end here.
28 minutes to the end, by the way. Closest battles out there on the circuit are not as close as they should be, because we're working out pit stops as of right now. Vasilis Katarinakis has retired from this race finally, and that is unfortunate for the driver of the Porsche, but he really has been in the wars today. So that brings us to 5 retirements, and we now have 31 cars still out there on the circuit, with Daniel Herlock the leading of them. Will he have to come in again? What about Jascha Schmidt as well? That Porsche being again. Daniel Kirby won't be. He's ahead of Adrian Rice and Timon Suvic. Tom Lane won't be in again, but he is good 30 seconds off of Daniel Kirby at the moment. I think some of these gaps are going to be pretty difficult to close, and despite their penalty, maybe that Isotta Fraschini car can still win in the opening round of the season.
Yeah, we're hitting that point where early in the race, we say, hey, 10, 15 seconds is not that big of a gap. But we're starting to hit that line where, hey, 10, 15 seconds is a pretty big gap. And 65 seconds, the gap here for Kirby towards the leader here of Herlock. That's a considerable gap with 26 minutes left to go. And I'm sure there's another pit stop that's left somewhere, but it's not going to be a full-line pit stop. So, yeah, Kirby has his work cut out for him here, Daniel Kirby does. And it's, man... But new best lap time, 1:33.214 versus a 1:37 for Schmidt there in second place. I mean, it's looking good. It's looking challenging. But I'm not going to say it's totally impossible. But 33 versus 37, I mean, somebody can do the math. I'm not going to do the math here at the booth. I'm not a certified mathematician, and there's too much going on. I can't do the math off the top of my head. Somebody wants to answer it. 4 seconds per lap. Is that going to be enough by the end?
Well, it depends who we're working this against. So, Kirby did gain 4.7 seconds on that last lap to Schmidt. But are we saying that Porsche is going to the end here? I would be surprised if it does. but maybe it is. Oh, that's wide from Schmidt as well. That is not helpful. Another last lap, a 34.9 on that last lap from Schmidt is actually a lot better than the previous one, but that mistake at turn 1 won't help at all, and it's wide again at the International Horseshoe. So the gap at the moment is 45 seconds. If it's 4 seconds a lap, then it will be only 11 laps required, and that's, and that would be enough, of course, but we've only got, 18 laps or so remaining, so that kind of gap, he needs to gain about 3 seconds a lap, does Daniel Kirby, and I can't see that happening every single lap. See what his lap time is this time around. It's a 33.8, which is only 1.1 seconds. Now, we haven't got that many laps remaining. Surely he's got to hope that the two in front are going to pit.
Yeah, and just looking at kind of pit strategy, I almost would not be surprised if they don't pit. Like, it's so nip and tuck. It's so back and forth for these drivers here at the top of the hypercar class, but Kirby is in a good spot. I will give Daniel Kirby that. Daniel Kirby has found himself in a good setup here, and it's not out of the realm of possibilities, especially if Schmidt here doesn't start pulling the time and continues to have little mistake after little mistake. That's going to really close things up, and then it's just a matter of passing, which I always say it's one thing to catch, it's another to pass, but it seems like these cars, especially hitting this point, we're starting to see it.
Now, Johnny Gutierrez is only a second behind very own Ross Smith. He gained half a second on that last lap, and given the fact he's only a second behind at the moment, then we could well see a fight between these two very shortly. It's so encouraging in GT3 to see so many different manufacturers around, as I've said before in this race, but also the fact that it's remaining so close between so many of these teams. I think we're in for a very close and competitive season, especially in GT3, as we've got Schmidt into the pit lane as we expected.
Schmidt into the pit lane. I'm curious to see where Schmidt comes out compared to Kirby, exactly where that gap will land. And now we see Kirby around past Schmidt. And Schmidt's still in the pit lane here, and Subic now, we'll see where that will land out. But still, 65 seconds the gap between Kirby and Herlock. That's a significant gap to make up.
Yep. I mean, he's not going to close that on pure pace, surely. He's got to close 3 seconds a minute, which is 4.5 seconds a lap, probably more. That's not happening. He needs a pit stop for the Lamborghini, I would argue, as Norm Graff and Eric Monnier continue to battle. These two haven't really left each other alone in the last few minutes, and if they don't have any pit stops remaining, then I'd imagine they're going to continue like this to the line.
Yeah, these two have been having a good little battle back and forth, and it's always fun for me whenever you see in a race series these drivers that find each other and tend to just stick to each other like glue, that tend to be their own little battle, and even though they're battling for whatever position it might be, it always feels like when you ride on board or you tune in with them, this is the battle for the win. They're acting like it's that last lap battle for the win, and they're pushing each other lap after lap. It's always fun, and it goes to show that these guys, while they're competitors, they're also friends. They know each other's skills, and Eric Monnier does not know the brakes on that Porsche. Whew, that was a very, very scary moment there, getting that car slowed down into turn 1. You could see there, the challenge of turn 1 continues to remain with 22 minutes left to go.
Yeah, just outbroke himself slightly. But it never really matters at turn 1 because of the tarmac on the outside there. You can get away with it. So he has done that. For 4th position will continue on. And Daniel Herlock still leads by over a minute. In GT3, Alessio Neto still leading here, by the way. We haven't spoken about him for a while, but he is still leading by over 40 seconds now. Oh, sorry, around 30 seconds, I should say. Then there's another 30 seconds more than to David Yunt. Carl Vesser over 10 seconds behind him. Joe Wilkes is in the pit lane right now, and that is allowing Ross Smith to catch up. He's towing Johnny Gutierrez, who may have a chance into turn 1 to execute this overtake.
Yeah, he's setting things up very, very well as Johnny Gutierrez here with Ross Smith ahead, 0.4 of a second, the gap coming out of Speedway 4, and not a bad gap to have there. It's all about, is he going to try it into turn 1? He's a little too far back for my liking, but that's never stopped someone before with a late braking lunge here, and I don't see it happening. I think he's going to settle in and really just use that braking zone to try to close the gap a bit. You can see the Mustang there very, very stiff in the turns, but Johnny Gutierrez very much getting that car around. You see the hypercars in the background. And then, of course, behind Smith and Gutierrez is more competitors going to push their way through in that GT3 class that are just going to try to follow the hypercars around. And, of course, these hypercars are going to try to get past as fast as possible through the kink. Can Johnny Gutierrez or Ross Smith use them to their advantage respectively? And it does look like Ross Smith is going to hold those hypercars behind there into the West Horseshoe. Side by side, the hypercars are, and now Johnny Gutierrez is just trying to follow along here, trying to catch up. New best lap time from the man Kirby with a 1:33.0 best lap time, second place car there with Timon Subic trying to hold off Tom Lane. And again, we're bouncing back and forth. There's a lot of good battles going on. You kind of can't take your eye off anywhere because there's so many good battles top to bottom that we're seeing here.
Yeah, that's the one for sixth we're focusing in on at the moment. I thought that bit of traffic would help Johnny Gutierrez actually, but it really hasn't. Ross Smith has still got a fairly healthy advantage in that sixth position as we've got 20 minutes remaining at Daytona. You can see the sun has risen and we are in the home stretch here at Daytona. Daniel Hurlock is into the pit lane. Now the big moment in terms of this race. Daniel Kirby is going to try and take the lead away from that Lamborghini, which needs about a half tank of fuel here, along with a drive through the pit lane. Now the drive through the pit lane is quite long round here, and so that's going to hold him back quite a lot. But what about his stop time? Well, we're not being shown the actual time for now, but he's already moving. Hurlock's already on the move. So it looks like he's going to get out in the lead, but with Daniel Kirby bearing down on him.
I think Daniel Hurlock did a splash and dash. So now my question is, does Daniel Kirby have enough tires to catch up? And does Daniel Hurlock have enough tires to keep the gap and to keep battling forward? What is going to happen here? Hurlock's still not out, still in the pit lane. So we see Daniel Kirby coming through the tri-oval here, going down into turn one. What is going to come in this battle? The gap 6 seconds, the gap 5, 4, 3, and he just hit the pit limiter line. Oh, this is going to be so close. He's shooting out onto the line. Hold your breath. Here we go. Daniel Hurlock.
Oh, he
does
breaks
he hold
late.
on to it? Oh, late braking around the outside. And Daniel Kirby, you have pulled off a monster miracle here. Daniel Kirby in the lead. Daniel Hurlock, I don't think took tires. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But if Daniel Hurlock didn't take tires, I don't think Daniel Hurlock can battle this back as easy. Not saying it's impossible, but with 18 minutes left to go, here is your battle that's been brewing for 2.4 hours.
And Daniel Kirby looks to be in now pole position to take this race win. Powers out of turn 6 and onto the banking again. Ahead of Daniel Hurlock, who gave it everything into the International Horseshoe there. He broke too late in the end, really, but he had to do it. He had to give it a go. And in the end, he has just missed out by the slimmest, smallest of margins and comes out second position. And as you say, what can he do from here to try and take the race win away? I'm not sure he can do anything other than hope that Daniel Kirby runs out of fuel, because that is such a Frestini has shown itself to be very, very quick, especially in the hands of Daniel Kirby, last season's champion.
Yeah, Daniel Kirby, last season's champion, going to stamp his legacy here on this 2024 VWSC opening round and just cement a good start for 2024. That's the goal. And Daniel Kirby doing very, very well. Daniel Hurlock here does not want to give him the chance, though, and wants to say, hey, I am your challenge. It's going to be a Daniel who wins this race, but which one? I don't know. And it's still 17 minutes left to go here. Gap 1.4 seconds. Gap is stabilizing a little bit, but where's GT traffic going to come in? Where is lap cars going to come in? How is the strategy going to play for this last 16 minutes as we go in here to the closing stages of this round one?
It's not over till it's over, but it is a long shot now for Daniel Hurlock to try and take this race away from Daniel Kirby. And you've got to remember, Kirby had a drive-through penalty to serve earlier on in the race, and that put John Ian a bit further back than he will have wanted to be. Made him make a few more overtakes than they possibly forecasted at the start of the day. And when you factor that in as well, you start to realise what a fantastic drive it's been from this team so far today.
Yeah, and remember, you still have Gutierrez and Smith here. This is the battle for 6th place. It's half a second the gap here. Johnny Gutierrez is continuing to put pressure. It's Ferrari versus Ford. It's the dream story of every car manufacturer. If you know any good battles, it's always Ford and Ferrari that I love to watch. And this is going to be a Ford-Ferrari battle for 6th place in the GT3 category. And here we go as we go around. This is actually going to be Gutierrez under a little bit of pressure in the background here. That's an Acura going around. Who was that dived around the inside? Was that for position?
I don't think it's for position, no. I think it's... well, there's only 2 Acuras, either Darren Yun or Dave Kors, and Kors will be unlapping himself, and it was Yun, actually. I'm surprised these 2 are actually so far behind Yun, because Yun's also a minute behind Neto, so I don't know how the gaps have got quite so big in GT3, but they have. It's the gap, and Kirby has been caught up behind one of the hypercars there, now caught up behind Yun, and Herlock will really close in as a result of this. Diving down the inside, a bit too deep on the brakes there arguably, but he gets through on the Ford and he's right there again in this battle for the race win.
The battle for the race win is not over till it's over. I said how is traffic going to play, and there's a hypercar around the side. That's Petrovsky off on the side. Man, these guys are getting very antsy. 15 minutes left to go, though. Hold on a little bit longer to the end, but this is going to be where things get very busy, and this is going to be where the real crazy moments start to happen. Daniel Herlock here, 2nd place, trying to make a challenge for the lead and for the win. Half a second the gap, though, to Kirby, as Daniel Kirby is continuing to push through as they come out of the bus stop. Oh, that Lamborghini gets a little swirly, but I think there is still plenty of time for a chance for things to win, and it's really just a matter of just one good move, one good moment, I don't even know how to phrase it, but one thing can change this race from top to bottom.
Let's see, Herlock is right in the slipstream here and almost has to go for it. Oh, he's in the grass! He's straight down the inside and Kirby turns out of it, knowing that Herlock would go too deep as he went onto the grass at the inside. That gap was ever closing, and in the end, Kirby knew how to play that one and gets the lead. Herlock slides it in, he's giving it everything right now, but arguably gave it too much into turn 1.
Yeah, Herlock very, very heavy on the beans there going into turn 1, but he knows he's got to try it. Herlock knows that it's going to be easier for him to defend the position than it is to get it, and Herlock doing everything in his power to get that Lamborghini around, to play to the strengths of the Lamborghini, which is going to be that cornering. It is going to be just everything that he can do. The Lamborghini on paper looks like it should be better than the Fraschini, but it's not showing in the hands of Daniel Herlock to be better. And I do think it's just a matter of not enough tires on that car left to get to the end here to get through. 1.3 seconds now the gap as we head down the backstretch towards the bus stop and slowly closing. He's going to try to run it down. And again, another attempt going into turn 1 if Daniel Herlock can keep this Lamborghini on the road and together. 1.1 seconds the gap. It's going to continue to close through Speedway 3 and 4. And Daniel Kirby he's going to be driving in his mirror just as much as he has had, doing whatever he can find to try to keep Daniel Herlock at bay.
Ooh, there's a bit of miscommunication there with the Corvette running 2nd in GT3 AMP, but Herlock does seem to have very good straight line speed in the Lamborghini. It is one of those considered to be fast in a straight line, but not so much in the corners as far as cheat goes, of strengths and weaknesses of the respective cars. It's described as pretty fast in a straight line, and Herlock's certainly using that at the moment. If he can get close enough to Kirby, then that will prove to be an advantage, but that's the real problem, isn't it? He can't quite get close to Kirby at the moment, and Kirby now goes round the outside of, I think that is Yunt in the 2nd place, or is it Kors maybe in the other Acura? But just can't get close enough right now, Herlock. He's still too far away with 12 minutes to go.
12 minutes to go, and it really is just a matter of what can you do. He had that gap closed up, and then the GT3 traffic caught up, and it's 1.4 seconds the gap here. Daniel Kirby very, very happy with the current position he finds himself in. Daniel Kirby here Kirby here, of course, your 2023 champion, and as I said earlier, trying to start off 2024 on a high note with 11 minutes to go. If he can just hold on and breathe, might have a chance to do so, but that straight line speed of the Lamborghini already has that gap down to 1.1 seconds, and it's continuing to close, and Daniel Hurlock just needs to keep on the back of Daniel Kirby coming out of the infield section. That seems to be his weak spot, is that infield section. He's not able to stay close enough to make a difference heading onto the speedway.
9 temps over the line. About 6 or 7 as they get into the braking zone, but Kirby can just go so late on the brakes, and Hurlock locks the tyres up on the way in here. He's still clearly going for the win. He's not settling for second position here, Hurlock, even though it would be a good start to the season in terms of points. He knows that if he wants to be champion of this season, and if anyone wants to be champion, they're likely going to have to beat Daniel Kirby and Johnny into the line in races like these, and that's what these final 10.5 minutes are going to be about. Another lapped car just up in front of these guys as well, in the form of a hypercar running a little bit slowly, one of the Porsches. Does Kirby dive down the inside at 6? No, has to stay behind it. Bit of miscommunication, the Porsche spins off to the side, and Hurlock may gain a bit of an advantage as a result of that, but the gap is up to 2 seconds now.
Gap is up to 2 seconds here. Hurlock not finding the time he needs to. And with 10 minutes to go, I believe that Daniel Hurlock, his time is running down. Just a handful of laps left, a handful of opportunities to try to get the pass on Daniel Kirby. But Daniel Kirby, cool, calm, collected under pressure. And there it is. 10 minutes remaining on the clock. And what can happen here? It is the battle for the win and for the lead in Hypercar. That is your big battle on track right now. This is where the closest battle is.
This is where all eyes will be in the final moments of the 2.4 hours of Daytona. Over the line again for Daniel Kirby. There's going to be a lot of laps remaining here, probably 7 to go. And that's probably about 6 too many as far as Daniel Kirby is concerned. He would rather this race is complete and over and done with as soon as possible. Hurlock goes wide at turn 1 though, and you do sense that some of those mistakes are starting to creep in for that chasing car.
Yeah, I think Daniel Hurlock at this point is just not having enough in the tank. He doesn't have enough left in tires. He doesn't have enough to give out of that car in order to get the gap close. He's maintaining about 2 seconds of the gap, 2.1, 2.2, but it is this infield section where he's really losing the time to Daniel Kirby. Daniel Kirby very, very consistent on the infield, and a little bit of a wheelie to give there. But Daniel Hurlock, of course, just doing his best. And it is that infield section that's really killing him there. Now the gap, 2.8 seconds as we hit the speedway. And you'll see that gap come down a bit. But again, every time we go through the infield, Daniel Hurlock's chances of the hypercar win and of the overall win slipping little by little here.
They do just seem to slip away with the minutes that are passing by here. That is a real shame for Daniel Hurlock, who has given everything, and he still is. Look at the way he's manhandling that car through the bus stop chicane. He is not lifting off and letting Daniel Kirby have this one. He's still going to the absolute maximum, the absolute limit already. Out through NASCAR 4 again. Less traffic out there now, of course, with the retirement of 4 cars, 3 of which are GT3s that no longer have to be negotiated by these faster class cars. And Kirby will be very thankful of that, because that's when the gap's been closing most. He's not exactly been losing time when the two of them have been up against each other 1v1. He's been losing time when traffic has come up ahead of him, and that is where he's been under most threat. But now that they're like this, you get the feeling he is beginning to take charge here and take control of this race.
Yeah, he's really holding on. And of course, while that battle on Hypercar is starting to open up, Gutierrez and Smith still very much keeping the battle in GT3 alive. This is, of course, the battle for 6th position in GT3 as we see the Hypercars going around the outside here. As we check Gutierrez, he's just a second back from Smith, which is not too much. And of course, he's going to tag to the back of the Hypercars here. He's trying to close that gap to the Ferrari ahead. Again, that Ford versus Ferrari story still going. And who comes out ahead at the end of it here with just under 7 minutes left to go? We're hard braking into turn 1 here with Johnny Gutierrez, who is just trying his best to catch up. Smith going a bit wide there. And now he's got to just negotiate traffic. Oh, he takes that Mustang off-roading because that's a back marker in his way. He's trying to get around because, of course, this is not for position. This is a lap. And then that's Stewart there in the way because he is concerned with the Ferrari ahead. Go ahead, Ewan.
Sorry. Yeah, Stuart Barge it was who, well, Johnny Gutierrez probably should have barged out of the way. It would have prevented him from having to go on the curbs, but anyway, he's done it now. And he's still not far away. Oh, there's been a real kerfuffle here as one of the Corvettes and a hypercar have come together at the West Horseshoe. Not sure what that was all about, but we'll find out. This is the moment into the kink. The hypercar dives down the inside, and time and again the GT3. Oh dear! I didn't even know there was a wall there. Time and again, the GT3 drivers have been saying to the hypercar drivers, "Don't go for a move at the kink. There's no point. You don't gain anything, and it's just dangerous." And that's exactly why.
Yeah, that was just a. That was just a bad move there from the hypercar. Bad decision. Hold your patience a little bit longer there. You don't have to make a brave move like that on the inside. And the thing is, I feel like the Corvette left him room from that angle, and it's just, man, that's an unfortunate moment there for Magnus. And now we see him just completely missing the bus stop there. I have a feeling that for Magnus, that is his race over.
Well, if it's not, then he'll spend most of the rest of it in the pit lane repairing damage. Oh, Johnny Gutierrez! He's repeated the mistake that Ross Smith made one lap ago. And so these two are about exactly where they were before. I mean, we've seen this gap so similar now for such a long time between Ross Smith and Johnny Gutierrez. I get the feeling that they're so well matched that Gutierrez can't catch up enough to really attempt to move and make a move as Guillaume Benck gets past Benjamin Porteous-Heath for second place in Hypercar Am. I think Porteous-Heath has had to come in again for a final stop of the day to make his third trip down pit lane, and Guillaume Benck has gotten through in the Cadillac now as a result. That's in Hypercar Am.
Man, having to pit with just 4.5 minutes to go, that's unfortunate there if that's the case, but that is going to be a very, very close battle down to the end as well. Johnny Gutierrez here is still trying to chase down Ross Smith and keep this battle very much alive here. And the gap, again, still sitting at 1 second. As you said, Ross Smith, Johnny Gutierrez, so closely matched here in the GT3s. And this is going to be a battle that I look forward to seeing how it goes for the entire season, if this is how close they're matched here in just round one.
Yeah, they are very well matched indeed, and we are enjoying watching it for the moment. Out of the bus stop chicane. Guillaume Benck seems to have sealed that place. By the way, they're 3 seconds apart now, so no need to worry about that one any longer, I would imagine. I think those podium places are settled in Hypercar Am, and indeed all of the classes at this stage, but there are a few still to settle elsewhere in the field. And this is one of them. 3.5 minutes remaining. Johnny Gutierrez versus Ross Smith in 6th. I think as well Daniel Kirby is not too far away from lapping these guys again as he goes on to the third last lap of the race. That's not Kirby in the background there, but I don't think he's too far away from lapping these guys again. There he is again. This is 3 laps to go, and there's a lot of traffic about for the final 3 laps.
Yeah, 3 laps to go here, 3 minutes to go. You can really settle things down. And at this point, Daniel Kirby, it needs to negotiate this traffic as fast as possible and get through there, not give Daniel Hurlock the chance to start closing things up. Needs Daniel Hurlock to really get stuck in this traffic, but Daniel Hurlock, it seems like, is doing fairly well. Gap 2.3 seconds here as we see Daniel Kirby catching up to the back of one of the GT3 Ford Mustangs there and negotiating around the inside, sending it through, doing very, very clean pass here into turn 6. A little bit of a wiggle, but doing everything in Daniel Kirby's power to ensure that Daniel Kirby can cement the win. And it looks like at this point, with the gap 3.2 seconds, it is going to take a very, very unfortunate moment to take this away from Daniel Kirby.
The two are quite well matched, but that's no use at this point for Hurlock. He needs to see some gains and some pretty quick ones as well as we get 2 laps to go at the line. There's Gutierrez. He seems to be taking a strange line off the corner there, but I don't know whether that was just the angle I was we joined the shot from. Now 8 tenths away from Ross Smith. I mean, he's starting to run out of time here. 2 laps to go when they get to the line here. There goes Kirby to bring up 2 laps to go for himself, so it'll be 2 laps for these two as well. I don't really see where Gutierrez is going to manage this, especially with Kirby being nice and conservative on the way in towards turn 1. That means that he will not be disrupted, Ross Smith. I think he'll have enough here to hang on to 6th.
Yeah, I think for Johnny Gutierrez, it really would have been a moment that he needed Ross Smith and Daniel Kirby to have a little bit of a disagreement there, and needed Daniel Kirby to cause a little bit more disruption to the Ferrari. And it is still possible here as Daniel Hurlock comes through, but it seems like, again, it's a very, very clean pass around, and we see there that Daniel Hurlock is through and Ross Smith there holding on. They're very, very close here through the West Horseshoe, the closest they've been in a while. So I'm wondering if Johnny Gutierrez might not have just one more opportunity to try to get this pass done. I think there's one chance here that he can take into the bus stop to really try to cement this pass.
He needs a big, big run on the exit of the bus stop here. I believe these two are actually going to cross the line with no time remaining, but because Daniel Kirby is going to cross the line with still seconds left, there will be one more lap for these two in the 2.4 hours of Daytona. Let's hope that they've both got enough fuel on board to suffice, as Daniel Kirby has got 30 seconds. He hasn't got the space behind him, the luxury to end this race one lap short. He'll be hoping as well that he's got the fuel on board, because after all, he's only made 2 stops in Hypercar today.
Yeah, 2 stops in the Hypercar. That's a very, very impressive run from them to go on so few stops. It goes to show very, very good car control, very, very good planning, and being able to execute a race strategy, think on the fly, and really, really make this race run. So for Kirby, should be very, very proud of this achievement. Daniel Kirby setting off a very good 2.4 hours here of Daytona. 0 minutes now remaining, which means that this is going to be what you get. The next line cross from Daniel Kirby should be it for this race. For Daniel Hurlock, it's about 3.5 seconds back, 3 seconds back. The gap fluctuating, ebbs and flows, but in the end, just too little too late for Daniel Hurlock to be able to catch up to Daniel Kirby.
And Kyle Vesser hasn't got enough fuel. He's in the pit lane here in 4th place. He needs one more lap of fuel, does he? Or he's, well, yeah, here he is. So Kyle Vesser, will he lose position to Joe Wilkes in 5th? Probably not, no. A gap of 50 seconds should be more than good enough for him to hang on, as we've got a new fastest lap from Tom Lane, who's going to steal that fastest lap point right away from Daniel Kirby at the end of this race. But the CMS Pro driver won't care at all. Daniel Kirby and Johnny Ian have done a great job today, and this race has been a lot closer as a result of their penalty earlier on. They've still fought back from that, and they are still going to be the winners of the Daytona 2.4 hours in the opening round of the Virtual World Sports Car Championship for 2024. Daniel Kirby able to take the car across the line. He will be the opening round winner here of this season. And what a great drive and what a great debut for the Isotta Frastini car as well.
Yeah,
George Angelidis, just George Angelidis in the background as well in Hypercar Am also takes his class win in the background. Alessio Neto has more than a minute's lead in GT3. He should be the winner there, and there he is making his way through the bus stop for the final time. Along in GT3 Am with Stephen Miller, who is going to take the win along with Josh Lepetri, in that GT3 Am field. Your 4 class winners here in the Daytona 2.4 hours.
A great run all the way through for these drivers to make it through the 2.4 hours. And of course, Daniel Kirby there with a great run. Alessio Neto, the GT3 winner here, crossing the line and showing great car control. Over a minute lead. I mean, that's just hands down an amazing run. And then of course, Stephen Miller will be coming around here shortly to take the GT3 AM win. And just amazing runs all the way through from these drivers to take their class.
Fantastic runs. Stephen Miller, by the way, still not having crossed the line yet, I don't think. He's going to be credited with a lap more than the Buis brothers in second position. Has he crossed the line yet? He was taking a weird line there with Stephen Miller into the final bus stop. He got enough fuel for this. He's a bit slow, but anyway, there is. Yeah, he seems to have enough fuel, so he will get to the end. And even if he doesn't, then it doesn't really matter, because he's a lap ahead of the rest anyway. So that is going to be the end of the race for Stephen Miller. It's pretty much the final car to cross the line, almost. He will be the GT3 AM winner of the Daytona 2.4 hours this evening. I think it's fair to say, Brad, it's been a good race, and we've thoroughly enjoyed this one. Not many moments in that one where we were looking around for things to watch. It was action-packed from start to finish.
Yeah, the drivers kept things very interesting. A mix of strategy, a mix of all of their racecraft, carving through traffic. If you're a hypercar, if you're a GT3, trying to figure out how to use hypercars to your advantage. There was a lot all the way top to bottom that these cars gave, and it was very, very fun to watch. There wasn't a moment where anyone was sitting and they were looking around and they were going, okay, there's nothing going on. We don't know what to talk about. There was always a battle on the field that we could find, and it was a great, great start to a long, long championship here that is going to take us through this 2024 year and is going to give all these drivers a variety of challenges. And, you know, by the time we hit the end of the season in Bahrain, it's going to be, you know, a very, very close battle, I feel, between all of the classes.
Certainly is, and if we haven't got any, I think we've got some race results to go through before we get into the final driver interviews. For whatever reason, Steve Miller is still willing to drive there out on his own and continue to lap around Daytona, so whatever. But let's take a look at the results, starting with Daniel Kirby, who wins here ahead of Daniel Hurlock after 90 laps. Tom Lane finishes in third ahead of Timon Suvic's Acura. Jasper Schmidt finishing in fifth. It was Wouter de Bruin in sixth ahead of Adrian Rice, and then the Hypercar AM winner of George Angelidis. Michael Locke and Keon Benck round out the top 10. Brian Hall was 11th ahead of Oliver Newman, with Benjamin Porteous he finishing second in Hypercar AM ahead of Eric Mournier and Norm Graff, who were battling throughout most of that race. Magnus Dahlgren finished 16th ahead of Adam Gray, and Peter Stefani, the final Hypercar to get to the line with the rest of the field. Alessio Neto and David Yunt were first and second in GT3, with JT Tarmy third and Kyle Vesser. Joe Wilkes and Ross Smith were next. He just held off Johnny Gutierrez and Stuart Barge. Then Stephen Miller, who won in GT3 AM, with Dave Kurz and Stephen Burris in seventh. Or second in AM. Maximilian Petrovki didn't have a very good race, I'm afraid. He finished down in 30th ahead of James Bowders. And then your retirements: Austin Birchfield, Vasilis Katrinakis, Sachin Sobis, Vinicius Gonçalves, and Oli Kayanlati, who round out the 36 starters of today's race. Let's first of all chat to race winners overall. That's in the hypercar class of Daniel Kirby and John Ian, who join us now. Daniel and John, welcome to the both of you. Good to have you with us. I'll fire a question to you both. First of all, Daniel, how was that race, first of all, and how did you sort of deal with the penalty that you guys reportedly got? We didn't actually see you in pit lane for a penalty at any situation, so was that the case? What was it for, and sort of how did you deal with that over the course of the race?
Yeah, I must have just barely been over pit speed when I came in to swap to John. So yeah, it gave us a drive-through, but kind of just sucked it up and ran our usual strategy.
Yeah, it paid off well as well. I mean, John, you stepped into the car in that situation during the second stint, and you did one stint to Daniel's two. Was that always the plan in this race? Tell us the thinking behind your strategy here today.
Oh yeah, definitely that was the plan, because Daniel is faster than me. I was actually pretty surprised that we were testing and I was only 0.3 on the fastest laps, 0.3 slower than him, but we know in the actual race, his pace is faster than me. So starting the race obviously makes sense, and also finishing the race. So, and then this race being 3 stints full, the length of it, so that made sense for us. Yeah.
Congratulations to you both for this opening race win of the season. Daniel and John, thanks so much for coming to join us, and yeah, congratulations on this win tonight.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks very much, Daniel Kirby, John, race winners in Hypercar here today. Now then, let's go down to Hypercar AM, where George Angelidis and Philippe Diacati will join us. Welcome to you both, Hypercar AM winners. Good to have you with us. Starting with you, George, you got the pleasure of taking the car over the line. When you got into the car, though, just what kind of a job did you think you were going to have on your hands over the course of the day after seeing sort of the opening part of the race for you guys?
I think Philippe did most of the work for it, actually. So I think when I jumped into the car, we were leading by a margin. All I had to do is keep it on the track and just be smooth and not make overly aggressive moves on the GTs, and it was settled pretty much. I think Philippe did all the tough work for me this race. He had a very, very good race.
Philippe, George has given you a lot of credit for the first part of the race that you did. Tell us about sort of qualifying first of all, where of course you got pole position, and then the start of the race. How was that?
Well, have good afternoon, guys. I'm honored to be here. Well, I couldn't believe it when I did the pole because I completely on the edge. I almost lose the car at the bus stop on my flying lap. So when George told me you did the pole, oh wow! But I don't let the emotions flowing during the race after the pole. I didn't celebration. I just try to be focused and don't misconcentrate too much. And during the race, I try to do everything George teach me, and I learning a lot with this man, a lot with this brilliant engineer. He's built a rocket ship, as awesome car to drive. I can do everything I want with this car. So George give me the credits, but I give to him full of the credits and the success, because I couldn't make it without him. The Acura was awesome.
Lots of congratulations going on for both of you, and we extend our congratulations as well. George and Philippe, thanks very much for coming to chat to us and joining us after the race, and congratulations on your win tonight.
Thank you very much. Another World Championship win. Celebrating tonight.
Congratulations. Enjoy the celebrations tonight, George and Philippe. It's George Angelidis and Philippe Descartes, by the way, joining us as Hypercar AM winners. Next, we will go to GT3 and Alessio Neto, who joins us now. Welcome in, Alessio. Good to have you with us. You're the only solo driver to win tonight at the Daytona 2.4 hours. At the start of tonight's race, did you think that being on your own would hold you back at all against the others?
Hello, everybody. Well, it was a pretty difficult race. I meant during the daytime, during the night, the car was perfect, just flying as a Red Bull in Formula One. I managed to, during the night, to be like 1 to 1.5 seconds faster than everyone else. The tires were perfect. The balance of the car were perfect during the night. It was pretty good. The secret it's because I am a data analyst and also I'm an electrical engineer. So I used to do a lot of stuff with Motec and calculate some things like the fuel. And what I did it was to start with full fuel. And then I reduced the rise of fuel during the another 2 stints, different of what I have done in the Thursday. I opted to do a little bit less on the second stop because in Thursday I do full tank of fuel in the second stint, and in the 30 I did like 60 liters to finish the race. And today I managed to divide between full tank and plus the 60 liters that I used. So I even still had left 4 laps of fuel. It was pretty okay, the calculation, and it helped a lot because the car during the night it was a bit lighter, so I could manage to do those 1 second to 1.5 seconds than the guys behind me. What was, I think, it was the perfect strategy. Also, I want to say thank you to XL Sports, Cisco as Racing, and Visceral Sports. That is the team that I'm racing this year. And I dedicated this victory to my friend that managed to race with me on Formula V Brazil, Francisco Costa. That's it. Thank you so much, Francisco, for the support, and that's one is for you.
No problems at all. I mean, just in terms of the rest of the season as well, Alessio, what does sort of this win do? How confident are you about the rest of the season now?
Well, I just think that we as a team on the XL Sports will do our best. We are going to be very, very strong on Qatar. Unfortunately, due to some problems with work, the Stravos and William could not race this round. William and Stravo were very close to my pace, like 2-3 tenths off only. So we managed already to do a 24 hours race on the December. That helped a lot with the setup for this race. Also, from the last year to it, I also changed. I have now a Pro Pedal and ADD, what helped a lot for me, and I expect to try to bring this title home to be my first title if with XLL if it happen. Also, we will be managing to do the ASC and another championship on the best as possible. Also, thanks so much, George. You are the best man. That's just a good management between Matthew and George. They are very. I am very proud. It's my third year here, and I can say that's one of the best leagues of Factor 2. Unfortunately, last year I could not race the remaining rounds because of my university, but this year, of course, I will be racing everybody. And congrats to every winners and everyone who finished. It was a very hard racing.
Congratulations to you, Alessio, on your win tonight, and thanks so much for coming to chat to us.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alessio Neto, the winner in GT3. And finally, we can chat now to Josh Petri and Stephen Miller, the GT3 AM winners tonight. Josh, will go to you first. Congratulations, of course, on the win. How was the opening part of the race for you? Of course, I had that setback at some point where you got a penalty, of course. However, you fought back from it well. How was the race for you?
Oh, it was good fun. Just trying to manage the car the whole way through. And I know that those speeding and pit lane penalties have really been getting people, and it got me a few times this weekend too, but I just couldn't shake it.
And obviously, Stephen Miller alongside you for this one. Stephen, you've got the pleasure of bringing the car to the line here on this occasion. Just sort of, how was that for you? How much pressure did you feel under to bring this car home for the win?
Well, it was a pretty hectic last pit stop for the Speed Details Fukahito Simpal's car. It was our pit crew was eating ice cream or sleeping or something, but they underfueled the car, so I had to nurse it around on not very much fuel. I think I crossed the line with like 1 liter. So it was rather hectic.
I thought so. I thought I saw you struggling a bit on.
So it's another win for me at Daytona 2 years in a row, but this year it was very different circumstances. Last year it was rain. This year it was trying to manage next to no fuel. My teammate Josh did a great job with the car, and our engineering team at Fukahito Simpals, Yuki Takanashi, was awesome in helping us get prepared.
Well, next year, you just know it's going to be something else you've got to worry about. So we look forward to that. Congratulations to you both, Josh and Stephen, for your win tonight, and thanks so much for coming to chat to us as well.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Josh Petri and Stephen Miller there joining us at the end of tonight's race, winners in GT3. That's just about going to do it for us here tonight. Bradley, we've had a fantastic run of things, 2.4 hours. What a great way to kick off the season. Very excited to see what the rest of it's got in store now.
Yeah, that's just round 1 of a 13-round season in 2.4 hours. It doesn't feel like it was enough. Can we I don't know if we can talk the drivers into running a bit more, but I would not complain for another 2.4 hours of racing if they would do it. But I know they wouldn't, and I'm sure that nobody wants to hear me talk for another 2.4 hours. So I think it's time to call it an evening and gear up for our next round, which is going to be in Qatar.
It is. Very much hope you'll join us for that. Make sure you subscribe to the JPB YouTube channel, the CMS channel as well, to check out all of those other rounds. We've got Thursday night broadcasts this year, as well as the VWSC Classic 1964 level sort of series this time around. So make sure you join us for all of those broadcasts as well, because the opening round of that championship will be before the next round at Qatar. So make sure you look out for that by subscribing to those respective channels. For now, though, we will bid our farewells from me and O'Leary, Bradley Dalton alongside me, and James Parfitt, the broadcast director here this evening. It's a very warm goodbye for now.